All right, we're just gonna start the stream here. Waiting on KungFuJoe to jump on in, but I'll give people a couple minutes to arrive. I think this will be an interesting one. For anybody who hasn't been following our conversation on what this is about, we'll be talking about the works of Judith Butler and gender ideology. If we can pull up a little bit of that, yeah, maybe we'll just put that on while we're waiting.
Neoliberalism has devastated.
All right, this is the video in question. Let's grab this.
So many people's ways of living and ways of working, forced them from their homes and their jobs, or made life increasingly precarious. So people are made nervous. They're made nervous by climate change, by war escalating as we speak. If you, as a right-wing political operator, if you reach into that fear and say, guess what? The reason you're so afraid, the reason you're so anxious, the reason that the future is unclear is gender or race or migration. You're able to reorganize and stoke those fears and anxieties in a direction that moves against those minorities or against those populations in favor of a really strong state.
Yeah, so this is perfect. This is a great intro to what we're talking about today. Weaponizing fear of immigrants, fear of gender minorities. Oh, perfect. Testing. Let me know when you can hear me. Testing. Oh, yeah, you sound good.
There we go. Yeah. Sorry, I was like trying to get. I was gonna stream on my end too, but I don't know. I was, yes, issues.
Do you have a do you go on cam at all? Is that something that you'd?
I do. Yeah. I was just trying to get my camera to work.
Okay. Well, here I'll turn mine.
See if it.
On in.
Let me see if it works in Discord.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here.
I'll turn mine on in case you want to capture mine for streaming.
There we go.
Hey, there we go.
I don't know how to do that yet, like how to log yours in yet, so I'm still trying to like figure this out.
Awesome. Yeah, first time seeing you on cam.
Yeah, what's up, man?
Got a great setup.
Thanks, dude. Yeah. Thank you. Got all my fighting game and weeb stuff in the background, yeah. I'm the anime fan, mostly of like the older stuff. So.
Fist of the North Star type of.
No, well, a little newer than that. Like,
okay.
Like DBZ, and I guess.
Oh.
Have you ever seen a show called? It's called Yu Yu Hakusho.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's actually my favorite. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great show.
That's my favorite one. Yeah, that so many great like themes for like a battle shonen type of anime. You know, I always enjoyed like all the different kind of deep themes that it explores. Like I was kind of going to use that as an example of like a story. Do you remember, I don't know how long it's been since you've seen it, but do you remember the Chapter Black saga?
No. I don't think I ever watched super far into it past, like, I don't
Oh
know,
man, it's
second
such a
season or
great.
something.
It's a great show. Yeah, it's got like 112 episodes or
Hmm.
something like that. And most people, a lot of people really love the Dark Tournament, which
Mm.
is great. But I also liked Chapter Black, which was the kind of the saga right after that. So there's this. He basically the main character, he replaced the position of another spirit detective before him,
Hmm.
because it's about the spirit world employing kind of like an agent on Earth
Hmm.
to be like the spirit enforcer or whatever for demons that might break through to the human realm or whatever. So there was the guy before him goes kind of goes off the deep end
Mm.
because he's doing his job and he's very good at his job as like the spirit detective, and one of his assignments is to raid this mansion where all these very rich, very powerful people are having essentially kind of like this blood orgy where
Mm.
they got all these demons and they're torturing the demons and delighting in killing the demons. And up until that point, the spirit detective, this guy Sensui, uh, he's always seen the world as very black and white. Humans are good,
Hmm.
demons are evil. And then when he sees this display of these people torturing and killing demons,
Right.
um, it just turns it floods his world with tons of
Mm.
gray, and he goes insane and he kills like all the humans in that party.
Hmm.
And then he takes this a videotape, like an archived tape from like the spirit world archives called Chapter Black.
Mm.
And what Chapter Black is, it's just a compilation of all of mankind's worst atrocities,
Mm.
like to nature and each other.
Hmm.
And he watches that video, and that's where he just completely flips. Like he ends up hiding out, for 10 years, like training and plotting, because he decides that mankind is not worth saving, that in fact mankind is worth, because they're so evil that they deserve
Mm.
extermination, basically.
Hmm.
So I that was one of my favorite kind of chapters of that anime, because that villain was so kind of complex in that
Mm.
he
Hmm.
thought he's doing good by ridding the world of humans, and the human side is showing that humans are actually have a lot of capacity for doing good in the universe, and that there's actually a reason to fight for humanity.
Hmm.
So I thought that paralleled kind of perfectly with our talk today. um, you sent a video, and I forgot who the person was in the video, but
Judith Butler being
Judith Butler.
being
Yeah,
interviewed
yeah,
by Ash Sarkar.
yeah. And then I was like, okay, like the last thing I ever wanted to be accused of is ignorant of what the other side thinks.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I listened to it, and I just wasn't very surprised at all by kind of the dismissive attitudes towards um, conservatives, like kind of like the concerns that they have within their arguments, and also just kind of flat out like straw man representations along with. And then when it wasn't a misrepresentation, it was just kind of like a total hand waving of a certain concern, like if it talked about the lowered birth rates and how disastrously consequential something like that could be. She just kind of hand waved it, like with that comment, like, well, the world could stand a few less people or something
No,
like
no, no.
that.
Well, just to really, really, because I know that's going to be like a critical piece of this. She said the world could support fewer people.
Could support, and
Yeah.
I understand what she's.
Mm-hmm.
I understand like the spirit of that comment, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
very kind of like, it's very dismissive in that, yeah, that question may have a great point, but I just don't care about it. You know, that's kind of like the attitude behind that particular like reply, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. But that kind of what prompted this. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
you want to get a kind of like an overview of my beliefs, and then just kind of see what you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, so I sent this to you knowing and stating that this would be something that I would assume would be pretty challenging for you to listen to and just kind of take it face value, and that you would probably have some strong reactions to it. So I'm not surprised that
Just a lot
you
of
know.
cringing and just like, oh,
Mhm.
like a lot
Yeah.
of like shaking my head,
Hmm.
laughing a bit. Like
But I
I
thought,
am listening.
yeah, but I thought it was like very on topic, and it's kind of it's almost like meta discussing some of the kind of conversation that we've been having. Although I think we've been having it in a way that's
Right.
unusually um,
Like we're
unusually
hitting
kind of
outside of the
charitable
mark, but
to each other.
we're not hitting like the mark exactly on kind of where we disagree. It's kind of like we're finding areas around this topic where we
Mm-hmm.
disagree, and then kind of getting lost because we're not getting to kind of the more central disagreements,
Mm-hmm.
maybe.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
wanted to hear certainly, anything where you hear straw man. I want to hear, what are your real beliefs, or what do you see as, missing pieces from, what somebody who you see, in opposition to saying, and any things where you hear kind of hand waving. I would want to hear, what are concerns that are important to hear out, and shouldn't be dismissed. Um, and then you had brought up this thing of um, using like they as a singular, or as using they as a pronoun, and you hearing that this relates to like demonic possession. And so I
Yeah.
wanted to maybe share, if I can take these things that are stated. So this is somebody who Ash Sarkar, who's this is a socialist channel, interviewing somebody who's a academic gender theorist. So these are people who
Mhm.
have a lot of shared perspective and understanding, that speaking they're speaking to these large differences within gender theorists and how they disagree with each other, but they're speaking within the community of gender theorists, as opposed to speaking to someone who disagrees with the concept of like a gender
Yeah,
theory
they're
or something like that.
speaking
Um,
within their bubble, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I wanted to see if there's ways that I can help translate those things, given that I'm
Hmm.
now talking directly, not just because I'm somebody who can kind of speak between, but because we're doing this in an interactive way, where any kind of
Right.
issues and misunderstanding can be corrected in real time. Um,
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, I mean, I didn't take like a bunch of notes or anything off of
mm,
the Judith Butler
mm-hmm,
interview, but like there was a few things she said that kind of stuck out to me.
yeah.
One of them was when they were talking about, when people ask like, "What is a woman?"
Mm-hmm,
Right? She seems to think that there is some kind of underlying um, reason for asking that question. Like
mm,
she doesn't seem to think it's just a question on its face, right?
mm-hmm,
Like that's all it is on the surface. Because the thing is, any normal person, when trying to understand these theories, is going to eventually get to that question.
mm-hmm,
Like it feels like just natural, like a natural conclusion for anyone trying to follow a logic tree in order to understand this, right? So
mm-hmm.
um I think it's perfectly fair to ask what is a woman, right?
Yeah.
But to kind of dismissively characterize that as, well, there's some kind of like insidious goal behind asking this question, when it could just be very much be an honest question, like, well, if these are all these things that you believe about transgenders or whatever, then in your world, what is a woman, right? Like, we would have to
Mm.
know how you define that so that we know what the ground rules are, right? And if you can't really define it, then it kind of makes the ground rules hard to follow.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great entry point. So, so I would say that um, there's specific times when specific people ask the question, "What is a woman?" So, someone like Matt Walsh, when he's asking that question, a lot of the time he's doing it in a specific way to try um, to undermine the entire like work that people are doing, because he's asking, people are giving him answers, and he doesn't like it, and so he goes on to somebody else. But I think what you're saying about like most people just looking at these conversations and saying, okay, well, if you're going to say that there's cis women, there's trans women, it's like, okay, well, what is this broader category then? What is this category of women that we're talking about? What's the definition of this? And I
But I
think
kind of feel like that documentary was kind of trying it's at some degree to ask that question honestly. Do you believe that?
so.
Do you
I
believe like, the
Yeah.
whole thing was like a lampoon of trans people, or?
I feel like his document, and I watched the whole thing, and I'm trying to I must have some VOD of that. I definitely do. I need to find that and put that up on my YouTube. I feel like that documentary was
Or whatever you want to
unbelievably
call it. Yeah.
unbelievably bad faith. He wasn't asking in an attempt to try to gain an understanding. He was asking in order to say these people are crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. Um,
So I could understand why you think it's totally in bad faith, and it may well be in some areas, right? It
but I would love to
um
address what you said, which is that could be also, even if you were to grant that, say he's asking in bad faith, that tons and tons of people could be asking it absolutely in good faith, and I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think so. I'm not massively well read on Judith Butler. I'm just reading one of her books right now, which actually perfectly talks about some of the aspects of the conversation that we're having. Um, Even recognizing, I think you actually might like this book, because they even talk about how people on the right see things in um, gender theory or the concept of working within gender theory as demonic. So I think they've got actually probably a better than most read on the non-straw man aspects. But I think when it comes to gender theory, it's kind of like what is a woman is something that comes up within gender theory, but there isn't a trivial definition in the ants in the that's given. That's just like a kind of dogmatic starting point. I think a great analogy would be something like, in the Matrix, when Neo's talking to Morpheus for the first time, and he's like, "There's something you want to know. There's something you want to understand about the world," and he's like, "What is the Matrix?" And it's like, I can't tell you what the Matrix
I
is. You can
gotta
only, you
show
can,
you.
yeah, you have to see it for yourself. I think it's kind of, yeah, what is a woman? It's something that it's like, I can't just like give you like a full explanation that you understand what that is. That's something that you have to kind of see for yourself. I think that's probably the best. Which actually, I mean, the Matrix is, among other things, like a symbolic representation of the trans experience, right? So the red pill, that's the estrogen pill.
Okay. Um, okay. I mean, that's interesting. Like, I'm trying to see where to. So okay, summarize that basically again for me.
Mm-hmm.
That the Matrix is. So okay, you're saying that the thing I don't get about it is that we've grown up, or at least my generation, right,
Mm-hmm.
has grown up knowing what a woman was. They at least they thought they did,
Mm-hmm.
right, this whole time, and then recently it feels like I'm just giving you. I know, like
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
in
That's
your
fine.
world, it may not be recently, but
Mm-hmm.
recently we're now getting like a new definition
Mm-hmm.
of what a woman is, whereas basically like I told you before, like I don't subscribe to gender
Mm-hmm.
basically, and I've without subscribing to gender, I've had no confusion or difficulty in my life whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
When I correlate man and woman directly to their sexes, like I don't it's always worked for me. I've had
Mm-hmm.
no reason in my life or any utility to change those definitions or to use gender, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um and I believe that's like the case with most people. Um which is why it feels weird and hard to understand now when people like you are trying to like explain it.
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, I'd say that's kind of like the common experience, is that we're just kind of confused because the answers don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I think. Um, Let me think. Let me think of how to start this off. So I think there's a reason that women and queer people are in general the ones who have developed theories of gender, is that the way that um, that gender interacts with your life is something um, that is different depending on how you're gendered by society, and the level of introspection comes to, in some ways, how that's policed. So, for example, um, I think there absolutely are times that men do a lot of introspecting and kind of meditation on, like, what is it, how does gender work, like what does it mean to be a man. So when it comes to like the draft or something, where men exclusively, historically have been the ones who've been drafted, and being in war and thinking about, what is the measure of a man. It's the bravery, and it's the kind of loyalty, standing with your comrades, these kind of attributes that define who you are as a man. And when it comes
Well,
to,
in my world, that's just called duty, but yeah.
sure, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Um, but then when it comes to women historically, the reason that this kind of introspection has occurred, and the kind of um, analysis around gender has occurred, has probably been things like, okay, well, I'm being told that I don't have a mind that's capable of higher learning and college education. I don't have a body that's capable of participating in sport, as we talked about. I don't have the temperament to be able to understand affairs and to vote. I don't have the temperament um, re- to remain single and have a happy life. Whether or not I have a husband or have children, or should have the autonomy, whether I have the capacity to be a full human adult. These are the kinds of things that women have contended with over the centuries, millennia. And so this kind of like questioning of um, this first questioning of, like, am I really what you say that I am? So it's like, for women asking, what is a woman, or why am I a woman? What makes me a woman? Because a woman, so for women in societies for centuries, it hasn't just been, you're a woman, you are, potentially capable of, reproduction, you may have a womb, you may have these like secondary sex characteristics, you may have soft skin or something like this. It's like a social and political reality that defines the limits of what you can do and what you can be. And so that kind of questioning against what defines or what confines who you are, I think is something that it's understandable why that arose in women. And then in terms of queer people, it's understandable because
So if you accept all that to be true, it's understandable.
Yep.
If you accept all of that to be true, then it's understandable.
Okay.
The problem
That's
comes
awesome.
when it's
Okay.
not true, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the problem. Is all that feminism theory doesn't really come from women. It comes from men who promote it. Because women did not get any rights for themselves. Men had to do it for them.
Wait, so just to center this on like some specific thing, I guess, just to start with something concrete. What's one place that you'd want to look at for that? Just so we have some like specific place to talk about.
So
For
women
like for like
cannot
voting
enforce
or
what?
for like voting or what's like a
Anything.
Mhm.
Any one of these things that. So first of all, it's just kind of saying that there's this dishonest framing in feminist like theory, which is like, oh, you're in these positions because men think these are the positions you're only good for, and that's not true. Actually, the truth is that you're in a position that women, these things that women do as women are extremely important to society,
Yes,
and
agreed.
their positions that feminism kind of trashes
Hmm.
are very important, and women should be very proud of being homemakers.
Hmm.
I think the fact that feminism shames homemakers is kind of like very kind of toxic and bad for society. So if you if you take that, if you lie to women and say, oh, well, the reason why you're a homemaker is because that's all men believe you can be. It's not all they believe they can be, obviously. It's just that we believe that's an incredibly important, as a homemaker, you're crucial to a functioning society.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot in there. So um, a clarification: feminists don't historically say it's men who tell us these things or say that we're only capable of this. It's societal. So it's not only men saying this to women. This is something that all of society, including other women, say to each other. And it's not that this isn't important for society. That's, of course, why these things kind of came together as cultural norms. This is something that's important for society. This is a form of I mean, this is a large part of what culture is shaping your society in a way that it can be functional and to reproduce itself. A culture that shapes a society into a way that wouldn't be functional would be a culture that would die out, and then that wouldn't be a continuing culture or society or whatever. So by definition, any cultural practices must be at least
It's not
something
even
that
just
makes it.
culture. It's crucial to our human survival, in my opinion.
Yeah,
It's how we
so
came to
that's
be
so
the
that's at like
successful as a species.
yeah, so at an evolutionary level, and then at some point, culture was built on top of that. I don't know at what point you want to say culture began to exist for humans, whether that was millions of years ago, or hundreds of thousands, or tens of thousands, or just that. I don't know. I mean, that's an open question. But at some point, a kind of cultural thing came about. Maybe you could say at the point that we started to have, respect for the dead
Religion.
and to bury the dead. Yeah, something like that. and then onto this question of, so, is it just that women were told that being a homemaker is important and feminism shames homemakers? So factually speaking, it was the case
Well,
that,
I'm not making an assertion.
oh,
What is feminism's argument,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So feminism's argument is that, so first of all, it throughout history it hasn't been just somebody being told, whatever X statement. It's like, legally speaking, as a woman, you can't go to school, you can't you can't vote, you can't own land, um, things like this. So those were social realities of, this wasn't just how someone was raised or something like that. This is like structures of society. But from a feminist perspective, I don't think any good feminist should be shaming homemaking or saying, it would be pitiful to only be a homemaker or something like that. It would be more along the lines of, there's lots and lots of women who want that and love that, and that's great, and it is important for society. It's like a great thing for kids. It's a great thing for families. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing bad about that, or pitiful or shameful about that. It's just lots of women don't want that, and lots of women are capable of doing all the things that historically it's been
Lots of
said.
women pretend to not want that.
You think
They
that?
always seem full of regret
I mean
once they get to
the
their later years. I mean they've done studies on this.
Sure. I mean
Yeah,
the woman who wrote the code for NASA, the the women who were working on code breaking in World War II. I mean, I guess women are people is like the fundamental thing
sure.
of feminism and of the Enlightenment, is kind of opening up that
But
concept
nobody's
of.
saying that women can't do those things.
Mhm.
They're just saying that they shouldn't do those things out of a lie, right? And a lot of you're right. Good, advocates for feminism should not trash
Mhm.
homemakers, but the problem is a lot of them do.
Yeah, I mean that's a
That's
problem
my
if
that I wouldn't have
mhm.
any pushback if that wasn't true.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's something that can happen. So if somebody says, "Hey, kung fu, you can't watch anime. Anime is trash. You can only watch, you know, live action remakes of
But
anime
I'm
on
do it
Netflix,"
anyway.
right?
Like
If somebody said you could only watch the live action remake of Cowboy
Jesus
Bebop on
Christ,
Netflix, if someone said
Yu
that
Yu
was the only thing
Hakusho.
you could
Oh
watch,
God, that was steaming pile.
right? You'd probably have like, you know, if you move past a kind of like, response reaction to that, maybe you can say like, okay, I don't have to trash a live action remakes of anything, but like, the first few scenes of trying to get through that, you'd probably be like, I don't want Netflix to ever make an adaptation of anything. Like that's how I felt the first,
What
first 10
I
minutes
just
of,
don't. The thing
right?
is that the same thing would happen here, is that whoever's telling me that you can't do that has no real political power in the world, right? So like the guy screaming at you, "Hey, woman, you can't get a job or make me a sandwich or whatever." That guy, yeah, sure, he's maybe an annoying
well,
heckler,
well,
but he
wait.
has no real political power in
So,
the world.
so you're talking about like right now, today in 2024, or
Yeah, so
so
things change slowly over time. Progress doesn't just happen
no,
overnight.
no.
If
I'm
people
not saying
want to,
that. I'm not saying
yeah,
that
like
progress doesn't occur, but I'm saying that it's like at the point that, so de Beauvoir was writing, like, I don't know what, like 120 years ago or something. I mean, the kind of like some of the starts of these things were during times when literally like all of those rights that we talked about just were totally unavailable. Going to school, voting, owning land, owning a credit card, opening a bank account, holding public office, just every one of these things were there was a massive social political power to these things, and over time, I mean, it's only through
to be clear,
women's
we're talking
struggles that
about the
these things
whole
have.
world, right?
Um,
We're not just demonizing America since the whole world was like that. Because I feel like that's kind of like
No,
this
I'm not coming from like an America bad thing. I mean, America is
yeah,
has been
because
like a
a
leader
lot of
in
times when
some
I hear
ways,
this
right?
being laid out, it kind of they make it try to sound like it's this America exclusive experience when really we do it better. We do women's freedom better than anybody. So
Sure. Yeah.
it's just kind of yeah,
Yeah.
it's
No. No.
just
No.
kind of hilarious when I
Yeah. That's not something that I say or
okay,
that I would.
just all right. I'm just kind of putting that out there because there might be people in your audience who genuinely do feel like uh, feminism came to save American women, exclusively.
No. I mean, there's ways that um, gender theorists and gender activists across history have interacted with each other through in different countries in America to Europe and in different countries in Europe and vice versa, that these kind of ideas have spread and movements have formed. I mean, in the UK, um, um, suffragettes who wanted the right to vote, had to like bomb churches to get these things pushed forward, right? So
Yeah, but
it's not like it was easy somewhere else, and
this story,
it was
there's
hard
also
here.
men involved in that too.
Yeah, yeah,
To be
absolutely.
clear, yeah,
Yeah. No,
which is
I
the
think
only
there's.
way.
Mhm.
So that's what the history of feminism is. It's actually, it's not really women doing the heavy lifting. It's
Hmm.
still at the end of the day. Um,
How do you mean?
because men are the enforcement arm of any kind of political movement. So it's like you can't enforce anything without men.
Why
Women
do you
can't
believe that?
enforce their
How
own
did
right
you how did you end up there?
because we'll think about it, right? So
Interesting.
if a law comes into change, comes who enforces that law?
You mean when it comes down to like voting, like who has to do the voting to
No, no,
if
no,
women
not the
can't vote,
voting.
who has
Like
to change to
the votes already happened. The law's already written into or whatever.
Mhm.
Who's enforcing the law? Women
Are you
can't
talking about the
enforce their
police
own
or
laws. Like, yeah, the police are going to be mostly men. The army
Mhm.
is going to like if you okay. So there has never been a time or a place in history that I know of where an army of only women has overthrown a government and like taken it over and said this is no longer this government now this is we're now like that's never happened, right?
is it about like a full on revolution of only
Yeah, full
women?
on like like women
Um
have never done any real revolution where they fought and like taken over like by violence, right?
Well, wait, are we talking about things related to like suffragettes, like the right to vote within like America or Europe, or are we talking about
Yeah,
like,
yeah, that like
yeah,
if
that was absolutely
tomorrow
women. That was absolutely women, yeah.
no, no, no. But if tomorrow we wanted to get rid of women's rights,
Hmm.
at like if all the men banded together and said tomorrow no more women's rights, there would be no more women's rights, and there would be nothing that women could do about it, right?
I don't think there'd be nothing.
I mean, there would be nothing that they could do that would change it back. Like there would
Um,
be no violent. They could not, you know, take up arms against men and like have a you know a battle of the sexes or anything to get their rights back. Like that would not they could do that, but it would not play out well for the women.
I mean, none of this sounds great for anybody. I'm not 100% sure what
No,
scenario you're
I'm just
talking
saying
about.
hypothetically. I'm
If all
saying
of the
that
men decided
women don't get
to
their
like literally
wi-
enslave at the point of guns and nukes all of the women, what would happen? I don't know why.
who's
I don't know how we
I'm
ended up
saying
quite here.
like if yeah if it wouldn't matter yeah
Why
even if we
would
use modern weaponry.
men do that? That seems crazy.
I'm saying
That sounds
I'm
evil.
saying we wouldn't do that. I'm just giving you an example that women's rights don't come at the hands of women. They come at the hands of men. Men have to give
I don't
women
see how
their
that
rights.
follows. Yeah, I mean,
Okay, so
yeah.
why is it in our society?
Hmm.
Why do we have the most rights for women and versus how come the women in like Iraq have been so ineffective in getting rights for themselves to the degree that we have here?
Why does America have a different political landscape than Iraq?
Why do you not do women not all over the world not want the same level of freedom, or is that just an American thing?
No, I mean, I think people in different places have different cultural and political and different kinds of pursuits. Yeah.
So do you
I
believe
think
like
there's lots of movements across the world to try to get more rights for women, to get, women to be able to go to school, things like that, for sure.
um so the places where they've made like zero gains as far as rights for women, are the women just not trying hard enough, or are they just kind of complacent?
No, I wouldn't say either.
What would you say?
I, I would say that it's not a really like well-formed question. It's like
Wait. No, it's a perfectly formed. So okay, look,
why are other countries different than the
women
United
wanted
States?
freedom and rights and stuff, right?
Hmm.
And so
Well, okay. So
they had it pretty
here's
good
one
here.
example. So in Iran, there was like a pretty secular government where women had a lot more rights, had certainly more rights than they do now,
Yeah,
and
I'm familiar with this. What happened?
I think there was some kind of like coup that the U.S. aided
Uh
in that led
huh.
to like a
That
kind of
men
clerical takeover.
led the charge in. Uh huh.
That men led the charge in. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I'm trying to see if I can
So a
get
movement of
over to
men knocked
where
down all this progress that women made.
no,
Ooh, no?
no.
Interesting.
I mean, I said the United States. Do you see
So
the United States as like as being men, or
sure.
the United States is men?
Okay, so basically, all right, so yeah, I do.
Interesting.
So
Okay.
basically,
No, tell me about that.
well, the fighting, the enforcement arm, our armed forces are
Mm-hmm.
definitely mostly men.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So a society that were full of women's rights and stuff just came out like men just came over and knocked it over like a sandcastle.
Yeah, and that was also, I guess, at the
Mm.
behest of primarily male politicians.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're saying is that, so the feminist perspective is that like a patriarchal societal construct is something that men and women both participate in and contribute to, and
I do not agree with that.
yeah, so you would actually say that
Yeah.
the history of the world is really just men enslaving women. You actually have like a much more
Wow,
kind of
that's crazy.
anti-male everything.
Wait,
Yeah.
that's your interpretation of what I think?
Yeah.
Really?
That's what
That's
it sounds
crazy
like you're
because
saying.
I remember specifically saying that women have a very important role in society,
Hmm.
and when they do that voluntarily, that they deserve massive credit for it. I remember saying that. I remember like what part of when were women ever enslaved by men? I just don't see that. I see us coexisting to survive.
Hmm.
I just don't see that as enslavement. We had
So,
mutual
mhm.
we had very specific roles in order to survive as a unit.
Hmm.
And if we got confused, if anyone got confused about what their role was, they died.
Hmm.
So the consequences for us, all following our roles were dire,
Hmm.
and that's why we did it. And
Hmm.
and so yes, we've managed to evolve far enough to where we have a lot of comforts that we built for ourselves, right? We
Hmm.
built up this society so that we're very comfortable. We don't have as many threats to our survival as we used to.
Hmm.
And that's what kind of bred this postmodernist thinking, is that these guys had a lot more time to just kind of laze around and think to themselves and form kind of things that were nonsense because they weren't busy enough surviving. So like that's what this is all born of, just kind of idle hands. Um, yeah, I mean that's just kind of the way I see it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't even necessarily disagree with that. The kind of cultural norms. So it's like, at some point humans were in a state of nature, and at some point in the state of nature, we were as few as like 10,000 humans, and we were fighting against disease, lack of food, other large
Extinction.
predators.
We're fighting against
Um,
extinction.
mm-hmm,
Like something like 98 or 99% of the species that have ever lived on Earth are now extinct.
mm-hmm,
And we're just another, species on Earth trying not to become a statistic.
mm-hmm,
And this is what we came up with to survive. It's
mm-hmm.
actually got us pretty far, this is kind of comes down to the theory of kind of I have as a Christian
I think I see
on
it.
why. Yeah, now you're starting to see it. So
Mm-hmm,
like I can kind of break it down to you. I kind of like wrote it as sort of, I guess, like an opening statement or something like that, just so you can kind of get a view of like kind of like a bird's eye view of it to understand it better. Um, so we agree on the nature of good and evil. I assume you assume
I
that
don't,
they're like
probably not.
when you see, probably not. Okay, so like when you see um like an Israeli sniper just
Mm-hmm.
kind of like picking off Gazan children, you don't you just see that as what, like a brain disorder, or
No,
like what you don't, because
I don't.
I would
Mm-hmm.
think that seems like a very evil, this person is definitely got operating in evil, right?
Yeah, so
What would,
yeah. So
yeah,
so so I would say that I don't see, um, certainly not all individual actions. I can imagine maybe somebody who simply really is just in a very like individualistic way is sadistic. But in general, I see in most cases in the world when people are doing something that I would describe maybe the act as evil, that they're doing so out of some sense of, um, some kind of like broader, push for doing something good in the world. They see what they're doing as part of something positive within their in group, and their in group is defined in a way that's exclusionary, and that's why my concern is to try to understand in what cases different
so
types
the
of people are
example I just
excluded.
gave you, then
Mm-hmm.
in the example I just gave you,
Yep.
there's an Israeli sold like sniper, and he's
Mm-hmm.
just having fun just sniping off these poor
Mm-hmm.
kids, right?
Yep.
What do you do with that person as somebody with your view? Do you
Yeah.
like try to talk to him and
Mm-hmm.
like understand him, or
No.
because like
No,
right?
because they're operating as a member of a military that has this
No,
ethos,
nobody
and
gave
they're
him any
operating.
orders.
No, no, no.
Nobody gave him. He's just kind of. I'm
Well,
giving you just
well,
this
this is a real thing that's occurred in the actual
I
world. So I'm
understand.
telling you,
I understand.
in
The
reality,
point of a
how it.
hypothetical is to get to kind of like the core of what you believe, right? So I'm just trying to get to the core of what you believe. So I need
Well,
you
I'm
to
explaining
like
it.
I
Yeah.
need you to do the hypothetical, right? So the hypothetical, nobody ordered this
No, no, no.
guy.
I know.
He's just like
I wasn't assuming
he's
that
just
at all.
conditioned by his society,
Mm-hmm.
and he just sees it as, well,
Yep.
no one's going to complain if I do this,
Or
so
this
I'm
is
just
the
going to
right
do it
thing
for
to do.
fun. Yeah, I'm just
Mm-hmm.
going to do it for fun. Nobody ordered me to do it.
Yep.
I'm just bored right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
do you do with the like
That's
now?
exactly
Let's
what I'm
say the
saying.
war
Yeah.
is over. Everyone has to face their crimes now. What do you do with this guy?
What do I do? So, like, would
Like if it's
should the
yeah, I'm asking you
Hague
if you are the
charge that
ultimate
person
authority.
individually?
Yeah, it's you're the authority now.
Mm-hmm.
You now have to pass judgment on this guy. If you don't want to, that's up to you. But what do you do with him?
Yeah, I think we are seeing a difference because what I'm looking at is something a lot broader and a lot more societal, and it seems like you're very much in this mode of like an individual actor and only their choices.
We need to figure out as a society, what do we deem as moral,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then how do we punish those who are immoral?
Interesting.
So
No, I
so
don't.
what
I don't agree. Yeah.
you don't agree that
Mm-hmm.
that in a society we should punish those who are immoral?
Yep.
So okay, so if they're immoral, I'm sorry, maybe I should clarify a little further. So if
And
they're
I can
immoral
clarify
to the
too
point
when
of
you. Yeah.
okay, so we've immoral. So I understand why this kind of gets confused sometimes. So the law comes downstream from our morals, right? We form morals, we form laws based on a collective of what we believe to be morally true.
Maybe.
I would say definitely that's what we do.
There's an element of that,
And for the most part,
what?
maybe not all laws,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think for the most, there are the most common laws that we all agree on, like you can't murder each other, you
Mm-hmm.
can't steal each other's shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, certain things like that you can't do, right? Like we collectively across all cultures kind of agree on that here.
I would disagree because
Hey,
I think
Wiggle.
those are some. Oh, hello. I would disagree because I think those are some of the most contentious things, right? Because just look
Holy
at Kyle
shit.
Ritten. Just think about Kyle Rittenhouse. Did we all agree? No. Think about when we talk about Israel has a right to defend itself.
We don't all agree
Do
on
we all
Kyle
agree?
Rittenhouse
No.
because people are fucking delusional.
Well, here.
You have to be
Here, let me address.
okay.
Yeah. Well, here, let me address.
You got to be a complete retard to not agree. That was the most black and white case of
Well, here,
self-defense
I don't-
I've ever
I don't-
seen.
I don't
I'm
want- I
sorry
don't
if
want-
you don't agree.
yeah.
Yeah,
I don't want to get
even
derailed in that.
so-
Well, here, Wiggle. Let me just
Yeah.
let me just answer this first, which is that for me, my perspective isn't this person committed a sin, they need to be punished. It's not that I never look at individual actions or never assign blame to anything anybody's done. I'm not saying that I don't do that, but I'm saying that there's another critical complementary part, which is looking at the way our society shapes our actions. And so it's not to say that I don't care about these individual bad things that have happened, but I'm saying I care about the system that is producing these over and over. So here, let me give you an example. So if there's a factory that's putting out some products and there's people, quality controlling them, and I get one of these in my Amazon package and I'm like, look, this is already like busted. The electronics around the battery are like corroded. This is like not functional. This is bullshit. And I send it back and I say, give me another one. And that other one is broken. Again, in like maybe a slightly different way. I might think like, okay, well, at an individual level, this can be hard to see. But it's like if you were to send out an inspector, you'd say like, okay, their quality control is not good. Or even their manufacturing is so bad that their quality control is never going to be able to even deal with it because they have to lower their standards to even allow anything to get through. Their manufacturing process itself is busted. So the analogy back to people is it's like, well, that is really sniper. There's like so many bad apples that I don't think this is a question of like individual people have done something bad. Of course they have. That's not wrong. That's not an inaccurate perspective. Of course that's occurred. But you also have to look a little bit like one or two levels up into like, why are there so many snipers shooting so many, unarmed people in the kneecaps? It's not just some individual people. And maybe it's not even just like a societal thing that it's like, I don't think that just like, Israeli people are just like bloodthirsty or evil or something like that. I think there's like geopolitical conflicts. So it's like there's the
and
conflict.
That's fine.
Yeah,
you can think nobody's telling you not to think deeper about like what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is what like if a murderer came and killed
Mm-hmm.
somebody's family,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have time to sure, we could think about the deeper reasons why that happened, but we still got to deal with that person in real time,
Mm-hmm.
or else society just collapses. People are just going to take up vigilante justice, kind of like Kyle Rittenhouse, like the cops weren't doing their job. So guess what's going to happen? People like Kyle Rittenhouse are going to come out of their house and start defending themselves if they're not going to be defended by the principles of society that we all agreed on. Nobody can torch and loot and take each other's shit. That was kind of like the second thing other than murder that we kind of all agreed on we shouldn't do as a society, and we enforce laws around those things. And when look at what happens the second those laws kind of crumbles and those things aren't being enforced, people are going to come out and enforce them for themselves. You can't have that in a functioning society, which is why it's great to think about the deeper problems, right? Like, yeah, we could think about, okay, how did systemic racism or slavery affect the black community or whatever, right? We could think about those things. That's perfectly fine. Nobody's saying not to do that and not to address those things. But at the same time, when they're having huge gang violence over crack on the city streets, we still got to deal with that in real time and find a way to stop it, right? So I'm not saying you can't do both these things, but you can't just pick one or the other. You definitely got to do the thing that's most detrimental to society, which is the damage, which we all agree is things like murder and stealing. Like, we got to stop that from happening in the now and figure out the long-term solution later.
That there'll always be a later until society collapses. Society, it's like you said, society's collapsing in multiple ways. There's immediate ways, things that can be like, tomorrow society collapses if police just don't do their job or something. And then there's these small ways where it happens over a long period of time, and these things are all happening not in a vacuum, which I think we'd agree upon. So it's like you have to take that informed long-term perspective whenever you're looking at the immediate actions, because that will give you a better and more informed decision when you have to punish people, etc. Because if you don't, well, therefore, will lead to that societal collapse earlier. Because if everything's an immediate problem that needs to be fixed right now, that long-term analysis will always be disregarded. And then we'll look at it like people look at Rome, where we'll have books talking about how there were these glaring, obvious problems, but now there is no Rome. So, it's a part of like Italy.
We got to figure it out in real time, right? So it's not you're not always going to get the perfect solution when you have a limited amount of time to deal with a problem. It's kind of like, okay, here's this Rubik's Cube. Figure it out in 1 minute. And there's a big difference between 1 minute and 12 days, right? Like, okay, figure out the Rubik's Cube in 12 days. Yeah, great. You could come out with a more perfect solution at the end of but when something urgent is happening, like murdering or burning somebody's, shit, yeah, you got to find a more immediate reaction, or else things crumble a lot faster. That's what I would argue.
Well, how about this as an analogy that I think we'd probably agree on? Is something like, our ship is like taking on a lot of water. It's like we have to both bail it out and like find and plug those holes, because it's like if we don't bail it out, well, it's gonna sink like really, really soon, even before we can find those holes. And if we don't plug those holes, bailing it out is not going to be fast enough for it to not sink. Is that something that we can?
Yeah.
But so in my world, if you got a giant pump, which in my world would be Christianity, which means we already got the answer, the solution. We don't have to think about it any further.
You can pump fast enough that even with the holes.
When you're trying to reinvent the wheel, you're going to have a difficult time inventing a better wheel.
Well, I would say an element to this is that it's not an individualist thing where it's like when you're talking about societal changes, it's all of us, right? So everyone plays particular roles, and that's part of that cohesion. That's part of that thing that makes us a more advanced species, is that we have levels of specialization. There's certain tasks for other people. Like perhaps your task in this is showcasing the plight of Palestinians, and so therefore maybe it's someone else's tasks to show the plight of people who are Israeli, who are against what's happening. And both these things are necessary in tandem, but it's not for you to speak on behalf of that group, because you're unable to understand that the same way I am unable to understand that, and perhaps there's people on that side who are unable to understand us. and together we come to a solution in the end. The same way, maybe it's up to that cop or whoever that goes into that location and deals with the immediacy, and it's not up to them to figure out the systemic problem and solution. That's someone else's role in society, and all of these groups have to all be listened to come to a cohesive collective understanding.
Yeah, I mean, nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, as a nation, I mean, this is kind of like the crux of the talk me and Socrates are having, is that, like, I'm basically, my position is I'm pro-human, right? Like, I like humanity. I think we have great capacity for doing good in the universe, and it's worthwhile for us to stick around and maybe just like get out beyond just Earth and things like that, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it seems like Christianity has been the best vehicle for us as a species because we seem to have the most success underneath it, like under that as kind of like our guide. And we've kind of prospered the most from it. And, you know, we created this country, which is now kind of like a beacon of like multiculturalism and innovation, where we're kind of like figuring out it's kind of like a beacon for mankind, because people from around the world, like, they love America, they value its traditions and like freedoms, and that's why we have such a like a melting pot of society, and why so many people want to come here and be American. It's why so many people absorb our, you know, music and stuff like that, and our culture. Blue jeans, you know, like started here and like spread around the world. Our science is we lead the world in, like, you know, science and a lot of like philosophy and stuff like that. So I believe
Jazz,
this country
rap music
is like this country is very important to humanity, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And when we have kind of like enemies of this country and people who are opposed to the things that made this country strong and made it great, are those who are kind of like what I would say are more on the anti-human side. People who kind of fall more into the archetype of that Sensui character I was telling you about earlier. They've seen like the darkest parts of humanity, and so now they that yeah, Yu Hakusho I was talking about Sensui, and how Sensui's just, you know, how he saw the darkest parts of mankind, and for that he thought mankind deserved to be wiped out because he loved the nature of Earth. He thought that was worth preserving. He just hated all the humans. He just wanted to get rid of the humans from Earth. So if he brought in a natural predator to humans, which was demons, since they eat humans, that he could just like introduce them to the ecosystem, and then the ecosystem of Earth could just live in harmony at last because all the humans are gone. You know, but I know it seems like, and that the person in the interview that Socrates like posted,
Judith Butler. Shout
it's
out.
like I felt that I felt that in her when she kind of like hand waved.
Oh my god. Hello everybody. Discord decides to restart sometimes.
Oh, okay.
It's like such a good app.
You might want to repeat your last sentence for him if you were speaking to both
Yeah.
of us. I heard what you said.
Yu Yu Hakusho is goated. That's all I wanted to say.
I mean, I feel like you know, I have a lot of contentions with the idea of like you know, you're giving like for me a rosier narrative of like how America is like perceived, and the importance of America. You know, with everything there is a give and take, and I think there's a lot of things that America takes as well as gives. And I think those stories and those narratives are really important. and shouldn't be overshadowed. And I think that
Well,
yeah.
the thing is, I don't have a problem with that.
hmm
See, because I only care about the betterment I care. I'm team human, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's my position. So whatever humans do, sometimes like humans will do things at the cost of other humans in order to ensure humanity, right? Like sometimes that just happens. That happens within species. Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, an example, like, here's a perfect example is like human beings doing something that hurts other humans to benefit humanity. Okay, then we should have a solution to climate change because that is hurting a group of people who
Disagree
live
on
in
what?
less. There's people who live in less developed countries that, well, if they were sacrificed off in for the most advanced economies in the world, we could deal with climate change perhaps a little bit better. That's the argument some people make. But
The less developed countries are the ones that pollute the most.
the less developed countries are the ones that pollute the
Yes.
people. Those statistics are skewed.
India is probably,
Yeah,
I think, number 2 or number 3 in the world in pollution.
yeah, but India also has the highest population on the planet of any country.
That would actually be China, and they're
India
number 1, I
surpassed
think.
them. They surpassed them just
Oh,
recently,
they
but
did. Oh,
both of
that's
them are really
interesting.
close. So both of them are like, in the 1 point.
Yeah, they both lead the world in the
Yeah.
biggest contributors to climate
But they're
change.
but they're also the highest populations in the entire world, and we're comparing them to countries that have, like, America would be the largest of the other advanced economies in the world, and we only have a population of 330 million.
Even if you
Our
look like
people pollute far more.
countries, I mean, a lot of the this is just true. You could look at like
Yeah.
data on this. The less advanced countries have lower tech ways of producing energy, therefore they put out more emissions. That's just true. We have better, cleaner, like higher regulated energy production.
I don't
They
think.
they have way when you're a poorer country,
Mhm.
the last thing you're thinking about is how clean your energy is.
Well, for one of these, I would say that doesn't discount the fact that people in most advanced countries pollute more on average than people in the countries you're
That's
mentioning.
that's not true.
And that is true because
It's
if you take 1.4
per
billion
capita.
people,
We want to
yeah,
focus on per capita because of course the populations are going to be different country to country. That's
yeah,
not the important part. The important part is how much pollution like per
hmm
capita are they pumping out. That's what I'm
and
looking at.
and then a lot of pollution was offloaded to particular third world countries. So when we were shipping off recyclables that we couldn't recycle, a lot of them were ending up in countries that had less scrupulous standards, knowing that they would then be burned in those countries and they would take the brunt of climate initiatives. So like for a long period of time, businesses in the U.S. were offloading recyclables that they themselves did not want to recycle and move them, literally ship them to third world countries where they were being burned and disposed of in those countries who didn't care as much about those standards. And those practices are starting to wean a bit. I think on top of that, you can look at situations like the Nord Stream pipeline that got destroyed and how we don't think about that as a climate disaster when it really is, because think of how much was leaked, but
Something we did.
it's only seen as like a war thing when it's also an ecological thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I think, like, when we start seeing things in that kind of way, we can see how, like, there is a real shifting. There is kind of a narrative. When it's Brazil, the Amazon rainforest is the world's rainforest. But if the world said anything about operating in the US, you can't even try our generals. You can't tell us what to do with our deserts. You can't tell us to do with our land. But in Brazil, the Amazon rainforest is the world's rainforest, and everyone can tell them what to do about their deforestation. There's narratives that change, and when it comes to being a powerful country that can protect their own interests versus powerful countries that aren't as powerful and can't protect their own interests that way.
Well, I mean, in that case, it's in Brazil's interest, economic interest, to burn down more of the Amazon rainforest. That's the unfortunate reality. So the
Economically, like,
thing, economically, yeah, that's
yeah.
for their, it's in their interest to burn down their own forest, but it's in the world's interest that they don't do that, right?
Hmm.
Well, here,
So yeah, we agree on
so I
that.
just so I just want to pull this back to some of, I guess specifically to the comment that Butler made, that the world could support fewer people. The context that she was making that in, right?
Jeez.
I know you see that as like she's saying that we should have depopulation and it's okay to have lower growth rates and for
She's basically
Christianity
saying
to go away.
here's
And
the what I got from it
yeah,
is that she's basically
give me it straight
saying,
ahead.
well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
No, no, no,
interject,
no,
but
no,
it's
no.
just kind of
Please
like the
put it
reaction
in.
I got from
Yeah.
it is kind of like she's concerned that spreading this ideology, like this trans ideology, just contributes to the depopulation of the world, and she just basically is like, yeah, well, the collapse of the population is a small price to pay for transgender rights. That's
Yeah,
basically
I
like
know. I know that's
the
what you heard.
spirit of like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's basically like, ugh,
And I know that you were pairing that with like we should have more immigration. Like let's make all of the Christians in America trans, and then bring in all the people from overseas. That it was like some kind of paired.
the thing is, the problem with mass immigration is that you're replacing the culture of a country at a speed like so basically when you let too many people in at a time, they don't have time to assimilate into the monoculture, right? They start, if too many people come in at a time, they can just carve out their own like big enclave, and they don't have to. They could be like embedded enough that they don't have to uh, assimilate to the culture. They could just like start, their own thing, and that's the problem. That's why we don't want to do that. That's why I'm saying I hold this country as an important thing to humanity as a whole, and if we and the culture is a big part of what makes it important, right? So if we destroy the culture by letting too many people who are not of that culture in, that's a bad thing, and that's something we shouldn't do, and that's something that no other country allows to happen.
But that's a paradox, right?
Wait. Sorry. So I did want to get actually to specifically exactly what she was talking about. She wasn't talking about anything to do with people become trans or gay or whatever, and then they won't reproduce. She was talking about women. She was talking about cis women. She was talking about as populations and especially women become more educated, their rate of having children is lower. And she was saying
That's
if
feminism.
yeah, sure. Being women being educated, that's like a huge goal
I'm able
of
to
feminism.
identify the two. Yeah.
So she was talking about if people decide to make that choice, because you were talking about, and I think if we're talking about like I don't know, whatever, 10,000 or 50,000 BC or something, if it was like, oh well, we've got 10,000 humans and the whatever pre-women females before we had culture, they were just female, not women, decided
Right.
we're not gonna reproduce as much, maybe humanity goes extinct. And I think the critical thing that I think is where we're kind of coming up past odds is you're looking at this is what we've needed to do for like all of our history to survive, and you see what's happening now in terms of kind of theoretical understandings, whatever, is like
what I'm saying is that women can choose to do these different things, right? What I have a problem is when they make these choices based on a lie. So when feminism lies to them, and then they make these choices based on a lie, that's the part I have an issue with. I'm not saying that we should take choices away from women. I'm saying that what we should do is tell the truth about feminism. Like, we should be able to critique it without being called chauvinist. We're just showing the holes in the logic, right? Like how it's actually not true that men everywhere are just kind of like holding their women hostage to a kitchen. Because I mean, that's just something we kind of culturally changed on our own. Like there weren't like armed guards breaking into people's houses telling the husbands like, let your woman go, like it's something that we just kind of like naturally like,
You don't think there was
just
any
kind of
friction, or
developed.
you don't think there were like women's movements, or I mean,
Sure, there was
it's funny
friction.
because
You know who
people.
was against the right to vote the most? Other women.
Sure. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what I said, is that this isn't a men versus women thing. It's fundamentally not. That's not what gender theory says. It's not what feminism says. Feminism
No,
says this is a
it's a battle
societal
of
thing.
ideology. That's what it is.
It's
It's an
it's
ideological battle.
yeah, it definitely can be, but
That's
it's
all. Yeah,
not.
it's not
It's
men versus
not.
women.
It's not men versus women. There are
No.
times when you have votes that occur that are very, very much along sex or gender lines. So when it comes to voting for or against politicians that will be, pro abortion, something like that, reproductive rights, that's something where you will see those lines, because when it comes down to, people having rights, then when things impact them directly. But again, feminism isn't fundamentally about this struggle of like men are trying to enslave women and women are trying to break free of their chains. This is women saying, okay, for whatever reason, this is how society has been for a while. But me, myself, my sisters around me, we've decided that we don't only want to be able to live in this particular way where we're, whatever it is, barefoot naked in the kitchen, right? Barefoot pregnant in the kitchen, sorry, right? That's like, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I want, and that's not the only thing that I want to be able to do. And that is not just what I'm being told, but what is literally available around me. It's either like become a prostitute and make some money in my own right, or I have to be basically somebody's husband to have money. That's been in the last, say, 400 years, a lot of what things have been for women across the world. And again, this isn't a demonization of the West or whatever, or America or anything like that. Like, America's done some fucking awesome shit. We've done a shitload of like awesome innovation in feminism. Like, this could be like an America rah 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 thing, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to be clear that this isn't like a war of the sexes. This is even like
No.
yeah.
It really isn't. I agree with you. It's not a war of the sexes. It's a battle. It's a difference between different men created different ideologies,
And women.
These ideologies, yeah, well, but mostly men.
You don't think women have
that's-
created any ideologies or theories or like done
No,
any
I mean,
meaningful
I never said any, but I mean,
thinking?
most of like the postmodernists are men, right?
Where would you place someone like Simone de Beauvoir?
Like I'm saying, like aren't most of the modernist thinkers?
I'm not
the
sure.
Majority of them.
Who would you call
Oh,
postmodern?
Well, let's see. I'm saying like that is the leaders of thought of these ideologies.
I mean, would you talk about like Judith Butler, or who are we talking about?
Judith Butler's that's not when postmodernism started. She's
No, I know. I wouldn't say either. But what's the scope? What are we talking? Because people throw postmodern around, right? Like, lots of people call Trump a postmodern, right? Because him and his people talk about like alternate facts and stuff like that. Like, what are we like? What's the actual like scope of what we're?
There's okay.
But how do we even end up in postmodern?
at-
We were talking about like gender theory. I don't know how we ended up on postmodern.
Yeah, but then they start isn't that kind of like where all these different theories like come from? Where it's like they kind of changed. Weren't the postmodernists the ones who kind of like look deeper into like the meanings of things and like, oh, is it a social construct or is it versus something natural or
No, I mean
that where the
no,
like,
that was far before
construct?
postmodern. That was like in the Enlightenment. They were talking about is humanity naturally good or naturally evil, naturally disposed toward violence? Do they need like a master to lead them, or like these were all things that have been, or even like in the Greeks, they were talking. I mean, Socrates, my namesake, was saying, do the gods tell us what's good, or are the gods themselves good? Do they just know what's good, or could we discover good in our own
Hmm.
right and perhaps, know more or contradict the gods? Could the gods be fallible? Could the gods not know what is good? Right? These are like
Right, right.
ancient questionings. And when it comes to
But okay,
theories of
well,
gender, this is
maybe
like Simone de Beauvoir is the main person who's credited with the kind
maybe we
of
could take
like,
it in a different direction that kind of gets us closer. Like, can we have like all those women's freedoms are fine, but can we do that without throwing like Christianity out the window? Or
yeah. So this is the point that I wanted to make, that um, what you're talking about with this is like where we've come from and what we've needed to survive. And I think there's people who throughout the ages have talked about, okay, but like how do we adapt to changing circumstances? And I think it's not as frivolous as I think you've maybe described it as being. That it's like, oh, now we've got so much luxury, now maybe we can think about kind of messing around and doing some wild stuff. I think it's actually something more critical of like, this is where we've been, and the way that we've organized our society and our minds and our lives and our identities and everything that we've needed for survival. And it's not that we don't need survival now, it's we very much need survival when it comes to, nuclear war and climate change and pollution and economic issues and AI and just so many biogenetics, the ability to alter the genome directly, these new fundamental things that can change humanity in different ways.
Christianity can still deal with all those things. Yeah.
Um, I mean, maybe. How? What does Christianity say about like the effects of biogenetics, or the effects of like how should like how at like a geopolitical level should we organize the kind of treaties around what kind of genetic engineering should be done, or who owns genetic codes?
Yeah. Who owns genetic codes?
Right. So there's this question of, can you patent like a genome? So companies that
Hmm.
sequence like seeds, or a human genome or an animal genome or a plant genome, want to be able to say, well, I discovered this thing, so I own it, and therefore anybody. So
Hmm.
Monsanto is like selling proprietary seeds that farmers have to buy year after year, and they own the patents to these seeds. And there's been certain like Supreme Court decisions saying, okay, you can't own like just a natural genetic, material code that's found somewhere in nature,
Yeah.
but maybe you can own, if you do some genetic engineering, I guess you can own the result of that. But this question of like, can you own not just, can I own like this rock, but can I own like the concept of a rock, is kind of like what we're
Hmm.
talking about. Like, you know, these things of just like a company owning nature, owning, Nestle wants to own like the water supply. um, Bill Gates and Monsanto wants to
Well,
own like all the
Yeah.
seeds.
I'm not
Yeah.
deeply religious, but I feel like the perspective would just be like that falls under some level of like usury, right? Because they'd say like if there's a creator god and this is spawned out of their consciousness, any rate at which you're charged to have access to this thing that was given by God and not this other person is unreasonable. It's like an unreasonable price to put on people, and they would say that's tied to like sin or like greed, or and it's part of usury maybe.
Greed.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a good perspective. I think something, a sequencing of DNA from nature should be like open source. That's the kind of, if it's going to be known, it should be freely known to all of humankind. I don't think,
Mm.
the human genome or any, plant genome or animal genome should be just owned by some company. That seems deeply wrong to me.
It should be the thing is that maybe it can be owned by a company, but they cannot. There's, we could form monopoly laws that would not make it so unfair or unbalanced. Because in the end, basically, my concern is like the good of the country. So if a company is operating in a way that isn't contributing to that, then we have to take a look at how they're operating and how we can curtail that to them maybe, benefiting the country more than they are if they're not doing that in the way they are, rolling out whatever it is that they're discovering.
Then you're in a perpetual battle because like think about it this way: if the nation that you're in is not a deeply Christian nation, and has a separation of church and state in different aspects, then there's a consistent battle with trying to uphold a standard of like Christian religiosity against the interest of the nation state that diverges from that.
Well, that the thing is that like Christianity, like the goods of it overlap with other things that we can agree on. So it's like there's parts of utilitarianism that Christianity overlaps with. So, we don't need to use Christianity in every to solve every problem, because Christianity already overlaps with other things that we use that are not particularly religious, to correct, some mistakes or to cure problems in the world.
But wouldn't you say that mixed system, that like mixed understanding, bringing things together, somehow goes against Christianity? Because isn't it like, from my understanding, isn't it that the tenets given to you, the way to live was already given to you at a point in time to follow, and all you have to do is follow that in order to have a righteous life? So anything else you fuse with that is something outside of that system.
No, not necessarily, because I'm not fusing anything to it. It's already overlapping with these other systems. Like, so these other things come downstream from basically religion. It's kind of like, when I studied martial arts, I studied like the history of martial arts, and basically all martial arts come from Chinese Kung Fu. They're all kind of like a watered down version of it. So it's kind of like, oh, well, karate has this kick and Kung Fu has this kick. Like, aren't there things that, yeah, sure, karate and Kung Fu have differences, but some of the kicks are the same, some of the punches are the same. Like, they have a lot of overlap too, because one comes downstream from the other. So of course they're going to overlap each other in a lot of things. So like, people came up with utilitarianism way downstream from Christian religion, right? Well, where did they get the blueprints from? They got it from Christianity. They just don't have they just don't have all of the pieces. Like utilitarianism has some missing pieces that only Christianity covers, right? So it's kind of like utilitarianism isn't a complete system. It's like incomplete, whereas Christianity is a complete system. So for instance, I'll give you an example. In utilitarianism, is it wrong to have sex with a dead body?
It depends on.
By what?
I don't know.
By what? I mean, what are you going to use?
Utilitarianism isn't like one specific moral system. It's like a way of reasoning within a moral system.
No, well, it is a system, right? It's a system of like, you're trying to get.
It's about maximizing some kind of moral value, but you still need to decide what those moral values are.
It's maximizing happiness. That's the.
Well, happiness is one thing that you could maximize with utilitarianism.
Yeah, from my understanding,
that's the one you hear the most as a description.
That's a common one, but that's kind of like a weird, I don't know, like libertarian, like.
I would say that the reason people say that is because it's a scapegoat for not having a more fully formed ideology. Like if you're Christian, I would imagine you would be comfortable saying, "All right, I have these kind of values because you know those values because you had thought about them in your life." Whereas a lot of people, they say they're utilitarians because it's very easy to say, "Well, I just want to maximize all the good and
Mm-hmm.
minimize the bad," and that way they don't have to explain or have the level of introspection you went through in your process through Christianity for understanding why you came to the decisions you have.
No, well, what I'm trying to the point I'm trying to demonstrate is that my answer for why it's wrong to have sex with a dead body is very easy for me because it comes from divine command. Like you're not supposed to do that. That's like Christian
Well,
law. And
well,
but
well,
for
you could make
everybody
that
else who has
compatible
to try to
with you can make that
they
compatible
have
with
to try to
Christianity, where you say that's God's happiness or something, and God is like a higher value. Like mathematically, it can work. For me, it would be answered because
I
it
don't
would be
believe
easy
I don't
because I wouldn't get a lot of happiness from that.
happiness is kind of is more of like a human thing. I wouldn't project that onto to
Mm,
God. Like I can't pretend to understand a being that is higher and mightier than my comprehension.
hmm
So I can't. I know a lot of people they make the mistake of projecting humanity onto
hmm
God, where like we're made in His image, but
hmm
we'll never be as we'll never be able to comprehend Him because He's so
hmm
above and beyond our
hmm
understanding.
I mean, it would be
That's just the way.
weird. It's interesting. I don't know. We're kind of getting into theology now, but I think this is pretty interesting because
That's
it's
kind of
like you're almost seeding that like if you have sex with a dead body, God said that that's like wicked and you shouldn't do it, but maybe it would make him happy if you did it. Like that's conceivable.
we don't do things to make God happy.
So
That's not
so why
what
do you do
Christianity
things?
is.
So why do you do what God says? Is it because God knows what things will be good for you or good for the world, or is it
We
because you
are
want to do
because
what
yeah, we're
God
basically
wants?
we are God's creation,
Mm-hmm.
and this earth is gifted to us
Mm-hmm.
as part of His creation, right?
Well,
And
we're put here to tend the land. Not it's not
yeah,
really a gift. It's more
it's
of
a, well,
a
but
it's
it's
more of
kind
a
of like
charge.
the gift
We're the
to us
guardians.
was our authority over Earth, right? We've been given dominion over it. That's the gift. Um, if I could just kind of speak in a way that would kind of like help the other side, like if you, I like, I'd imagine someone who's just completely not religious at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'll try to explain it in that way. So you could think of us maybe as God's kind of special little pet project, right?
Huh.
Um, if you can imagine a being we think as like perfect or whatever, but is kind of like, let me see if within this natural world, Earth, I could seed within it a piece of my being,
Mm-hmm.
but that exists in this three-dimensional plane. In the chaos that is this universe,
Mm-hmm.
can my essence be manifested, or will it be corrupted by the nature of this 3D universe, right?
Hmm.
Like the other element in it. You could kind of imagine it like that. So God has an antithesis, right? So like in the beginning, there's this story. It's funny. I think of these stories. I find them to be true because they exist across cultures and people who have had no connection to each other, right? Before boats and planes were made, right? Like every culture has a dragon,
Mm.
and we're like kind of like, why is that? Why does every culture that has never like they didn't have contact with each other, but they all had this concept of a dragon, right? Well, maybe it's because they all at one point discovered dinosaur bones and they all came up with the same kind of mythological creature,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in every culture around the world, there is this good entity, this good powerful entity, and this bad powerful entity. They're always like the yin and yang, like clashing against each other. So it's like in like Greek mythology, you got like Zeus and you have Hades, right?
Well, they're not.
Um,
They're not really like. They're
they're
not really
they're the
clashing. They're not good and evil in
function.
that way. I mean, it's
They're not
like
good. Yeah, but
usually Zeus and Hera who are clashing. It's usually the husband
they're
and wife.
not clashing, but they're parallels, right?
Not
One
really,
rules up
no.
here. One rules up here, and the other rules down here. Hades was put to be the god of the underworld, right?
Yeah, but
Well,
they're
Zeus
not.
is the god of all gods up here.
Sure. I
Yeah,
wouldn't really
that's
characterize like Hellenic mythology in that way. It,
from
I'm just saying, if
it
you were to
doesn't really
give like
have
a
that
base
kind
level
of.
understanding,
Yeah.
perspective,
well, that's my understanding when I study like the Greek mythology. It's that okay, Zeus is the one who doled out the roles to the other gods.
Yeah, I would
Is
say
my
that
understanding.
from my understanding, like Hades is nowhere attributable to somebody like
Like
Lucifer.
Satan or. Yeah, yeah.
It's
But,
much
well, not in character, but what I'm saying is that they are in control of the same domain.
But that domain, from my understanding, is well understood and like by the Greeks. So it's like somebody has to do that role,
Mm-hmm.
and that role is assigned to this person who doesn't
Yeah.
really want to do it. But it's an
What I'm
understood
saying is
thing
that
that
the dimensions are the forget the roles and everything. The
yeah.
dimensions are the same. One is subterranean. He's
Mm-hmm.
down in the underworld,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is up in what we call the heavens. Right? There's always these two worlds like operating in opposition to each other. No matter, I was just using Greek mythology as one example, but that's only one example in all examples of ancient mythologies all over the world. There is always somebody like in ancient Egypt, right? We have there was
Osiris and Anubis.
yeah, there's
The
like Osiris, and
or
then there's the one
Set,
who's like the
the
Erebus
crocodile, right?
or
Isis,
yeah,
and Osiris, and
yeah, they're
then
the
Baphomet.
there's
Osiris and
always
Set, I
one
think.
who's like yeah, there's always a god who's up here, and then there's one who's down here, right? Like it's Set or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
But
um
I think it's different
yeah,
in the sense that in Christianity or those religions, it seems set
they
like
are all different. I'm not disagreeing with you that they're not
yeah,
different.
I understand
What I'm trying to say is that
they
globally, all over the world, there's this duplicity of
that's
light
what I'm
and dark, high and low. Like they both have these. One is usually more attractive than the other. The one that rules up in the clouds is usually looks very, clean and attractive and perfect, whereas the person who rules the underworld is a little more dark, a little more unattractive, a little more insidious, kind of, gives you a
with the
creepier
idea of
feeling.
with the idea of an underworld in that sense. From my understanding, it was like that is a process that everyone had to go through
Mm-hmm.
and is like necessary to this whole system.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when it comes to my understanding, which is limited of like Satan, Lucifer, types like that, is they don't need to exist and they're a plague that everyone has to deal with. And whereas like you need, if there's not a Hades, there has to be someone in that role who will be assigned because we need an underworld, but you don't need a hell, from my understanding.
Sure, that no. Well, um, the thing is that there's no need of hell like that. That's the wrong framing. Is that the universe has a balance to it, right? There is no. It wasn't created out of a need. It's just that one cannot exist without the other.
Good cannot exist without evil.
Right. Light cannot exist without dark. It's a balance, right? Like these things have to exist for the other to exist.
Is there always the same amount balanced
No.
of good and evil
No.
in the world?
In these religions, there is evil.
These two forces are always competing against each other.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And in like from my understanding, in certain Eastern religions, there is more of an idea of balance. And like what you're talking about, Zeus having control of all these other gods, that's not really balanced compared to like what Hades has access to, or even in Christianity, it's like yeah, you might have some angels, etc. But then think of how much power Satan has showcased through looking at all the
Depends
wars.
on what your
Yeah,
yeah, it depends on what your definition of balance is.
Hmm.
balance from the perspective of like humans who would be imperfect beings. So from our
We
perspective,
have an imperfect then by that definition we have an imperfect understanding of balance.
yeah, yeah, I don't agree, but I feel like that would be your position. So like we
Well,
have
you
to.
said it. We said, oh, do you not agree that we're imperfect beings? Is that what you were disagreeing to?
I would disagree with the frame. I think we are imperfect beings, but I
Hmm.
disagree with the
Okay.
framework that we cannot reach perfection.
Sure. No, but that's my point is that is what we evolved to do. We evolved to believe in God,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It was put in our it's part of our codex, or like that's just something we were evolved to do, and there's a reason for that.
That we to believe in. I would
Or
say, if
highly
anything,
anthropomorphic
I,
in the way that we view the world. Like if you give somebody a rock and put like some eyes and a smiley face on it, that's going to be their new best friend. I mean, as humans,
Right.
we're yeah, we'll there's this page like humans will pair bond with anything. It's like we love to see the world as animate. Like I think probably animism was one of our earliest kind of religious, spiritual beliefs, as seeing spirits in everything, and to think that the world has a mother in the same way that humans have mothers or animals have mothers. I think is a very makes a lot of sense as humans to do. I think this concept of
Mm.
imbalance is really interesting. So from the Jewish perspective, when we ask, why are why is there chaos in the world? Why are things why do things go to shit occasionally? And
Are you
especially when we
religiously Jewish, by the way? I'm just curious.
yeah, I was raised Jewish. I read from the Torah. I was bar mitzvahed. I think I carry a lot of values from that. I don't walk around thinking about what does God want me to do. I don't reason in that way, but I would say that I have
been shaped by
um, shaped by it absolutely, and it's something that I think about. It's something that I contend with. But
I was just curious because
mhm,
I heard that I'm not super versed in Judaism. I know like some of the major beliefs,
mhm.
but one that I wasn't clear on is that they don't believe in a devil or
Yep, yeah,
Lucifer.
that's true. Yeah, that's a Christian
Okay,
thing. Yeah,
okay,
so
gotcha,
there's
gotcha.
like you look at some like folk stories from like maybe there's some older stuff, but maybe more kind of like Eastern Europe. They have like folk stories with like kind of a trickster, but not like an adversary to God, just kind of like an evil spirit that will
Yeah,
kind of like mess with you.
like the Muslims
yeah,
have jinns.
Yeah, more like
Aren't
that.
Jin, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
aren't always evil, but the way they can impact people can be.
Mm-hmm. And
It's
there's
kind
and
of
there's definitely like spirits
it,
that can mess with
it
you, or the dead, or
Yeah.
stuff like
it's
that.
kind of interesting because at times in which like people lost large degrees of faith,
Mm-hmm.
like in the interwar period between World War I and World War II, you
Mm-hmm.
had like people of different class, like people of different financial class,
Mm-hmm.
like explore spirituality in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Where you had lower class individuals, monetarily wise, not like they're just shitty people or something, move towards like tarot readings and like the occult, and a lot of that is kind of focused on an idea of like summoning of a spirit that might be perceived as bad, but you don't know their full intentionality.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas wealthier groups move towards almost incorporating science into religion and moving towards meditation and
Mm-hmm.
yoga and particular types of like ways of incorporating science to almost legitimize their spirituality. And we see
Interesting.
that to this point today, where you can still see there's a large group of people who are more working class that might believe in the occult or like
Mm-hmm.
mind reading or tarot cards or what have you,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are at a higher income bracket who believe in things like karma and manifestation and like things like
it,
that.
it was a big thing back in like the 20s and 30s amongst the wealthy too, I believe, when a lot of them were going to there was this big um I think Houdini was going
Mm.
around exposing all these people who were pretending to be psychics that were summoning the dead and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was like a huge cash grab from mostly like wealthy people who wanted to talk to their dead relatives or whatever. And they started believing in all this like wacky stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it plays even into like our history. Like think about like in the 80s and like the 70s and 80s when America was going through like those economic crashes. People thought that the way in which these Eastern giants, like countries like Japan, were succeeding had to do with like the workplace culture or their Eastern philosophy, and a lot of businesses started to copy like Eastern business standards and thinking that there's something magical going on with their way of thinking that's leading to these results. And then a lot of those countries just ended up having a delayed crash in like the 90s because they had
Yeah.
centralized governments.
Right. 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 Yeah. I mean, that all makes sense. I mean, like the thing is that, I mean, we've been influenced, like evolved and influenced by like these beliefs, and I believe that's kind of like what made us strong as a country. And now that I know it just seems like a correlation, and not all correlations equal causation, but sometimes they do. When you start to see an unraveling of religion, and then you start to see an unraveling of society, and then you start seeing the decline of that country's strength and influence in the world because they're unraveling at it like a societal level. It's all like this domino effect, and that I believe that we're kind of feeling right now. And that's just my kind of religious, my
Mm.
view as like a Christian on it.
Mm.
So like I believe that there are these balancing energies in the universe that are competing for us. They don't control us. Like I don't believe in demonic possession. Like they take hold of you and then control you like a puppet. It's more like they influence you, and then you start doing the thing that they want you to do, and then through just through basically influencing you, that is the possession. It's more voluntary than the kind of more Hollywood version that people know.
That's interesting, right? Is that if the perception is God, we is a being beyond us, like beyond our understanding, and that we can't reason the rationale of what God does or why. Why is it that we can rationalize the reasoning behind uh spirits that might possess people and why they
Mm.
do the things they do?
Mm.
Because he gave us laws, and rules, and Jesus gave us um, duties, sets of duties and rules to live by, and they gave us ways to identify evil so that we don't become fooled by it.
Okay. Is this why you have to get like not you, but the general you has to get like a professional for like exorcisms or stuff?
That's more of like a Catholic
Mm.
thing. I mean, we believe more that God kind of like equally endows those who believe in him with an equal set of power, right? So I don't
Mm.
need to be a Catholic priest to have the power to exercise my own home, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
That sounds
that's
more
where we
sensible.
Mm.
that's just kind of a difference between the Catholic and Orthodox faiths. They agree with us, but we don't agree with them, basically. Like
Um,
they agree with our doctrine and theology, but we don't agree with theirs that they add on to it, basically.
I I would say that I don't know you super well, but listening to how you were talking about the United States, I would say that like if you were able to think for a moment in the sense that the U.S. is like separate the American people from the government itself in that way, Like we can see the history of the U.S. as like a push-pull between Christians and the nation state and liberal ideas. And almost over time, this push pull has led to certain benefits for particular groups against the will of religious groups, and a push pull in the other way. Like, think of the temperance movement, which you could argue was probably good. It's probably good if, like, alcohol was, like, prohibited. But then the push pull back because of liberal
Mm.
ideas. And you can look at this kind of push pull and see that we're just in the middle of that swing where our country moved more into liberal ideas and pushed away Christian religiosity, and now there's a push
Yeah,
pull back almost like a
yeah,
pendulum.
yeah. So
Mhm.
basically, it's kind of like it might be true. I am open to the idea of maybe there are some things that should be more hardcore rules ingrained into the society because they overlap like the like a lot of the Christian values I would say overlap with utilitarian values in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
and but they're just unseen to the people who don't like Christianity, right? So it's like the people who argue like, oh, alcohol, like, sure, we should have the freedom to consume alcohol, whatever, like, yeah, that's true, but like there's a lot of things that I don't believe the government has a role in doing, right? Like there is something that we as a society should be figuring out without
Hmm.
legislation against
Hmm.
everything. That's kind of what I believe. Like, drugs. Sure, there are some drugs I believe are too dangerous, like too lethal to just allow to be circulated freely in the
Hmm.
streets. But there are other drugs that the non-lethal drugs, I would say, to some degree, there's much more of a better effect on a social level than there would be on like a policy level, right?
Hmm.
So like I always say that on a social level, you can fix the crime problem in the black community better than any policy ever will, right? Like it has to be about social attitudes and changes in culture and norms that have the biggest effect on that. It'll have a bigger effect than policy ever will. That's why I just believe there are some things are just either the government should have a minimal role or no role in that we need to figure out for ourselves. And one of the things that helps us figure it out the best is Christianity.
Um, I have a disagreement with the take about the social issues of black communities, but overall, I understand what you're saying. It illustrated better what you were saying to me, so I have a more fuller understanding of how you believe things should be. I have a
Oh yeah, but like, would you say massive amounts of policing is better for the black community than them just kind of figuring out how to keep their kids off the streets, how to be better advocates for higher education at home and things like that, things of that nature? Wouldn't that help the black community more than just like let's just send more cops in there, right?
I think what would help the most is like economic benefit. Like, it's kind of like think of the migrant crisis. Um, like with people being shipped, particularly to like New York City, one of the complaints that people have, like legislators that are anti
Okay,
the migrants
I
coming in.
understand. I understand where you're going with this, but like I said, like there's earlier in the
Yeah,
conversation, we were talking about immediate, like act crimes and things being dire that you need to deal with
yeah,
immediately, right? And what's
yeah.
going to so in the meantime, all we have right now is throwing more cops in there to kind of like control the
Well,
peace
wait,
and stuff
No,
like that.
no. Like
wait. So why
I
is
don't think
cops
that.
immediate but cash isn't? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Because cash doesn't like,
I
okay, a murderer just did it, somebody just did a drive-by on a birthday party, let's throw cash at them. That's not the answer, right? The
um
immediate answer is
No,
the
not at
cops need to
them.
get in there
I
and take a report
I,
and do an investigation and
I
bring them
didn't
to justice.
I
That needs to
didn't
be the immediate.
mention cash handouts. I was getting to the point where it's like there's
That's not an immediate like solution to
yeah I was
things that are happening in real time. That's what I'm trying to say.
what I
Is
was just
that
trying to present is that like if the some of these migrants are not able to work, so they just want to have a job, and then they'll make money on their own, which leads to what you're saying about people finding their own solutions. But because they're unable to, then they're stuck having to collect money from a government because they're in
Mm-hmm.
this status.
Whoa, hold
of
on,
saying,
migrants? You're kind of sneaking something in here,
how is
kind
it
of
being
past
stuck?
me to get.
I
Oh yeah, but you're saying migrants. I already have an issue with migrant. Do you mean an illegal immigrant?
I was talking about specifically the migrants that were bused to New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so people who crossed over here illegally, the answer for me is that they shouldn't have made it that far in the first place. They should not have made it to the interior of the country.
Sure, but they're here now.
So,
That's the
like
immediate thing, right? So
Yeah,
that's what we have to
you're,
work.
you're,
You're
you're
talking about
taking the
systemic stuff out
problem.
in the future. We're talking
I'm
about
not giving-
immediate
You're
stuff.
taking the
I'm not-
problem like way further steps down than the solution. The solution I had was way back here. You're talking about the problem now that it's gone this far. My
I'm-
solution already
I'm-
you know what I mean? Like,
I'm just using
yeah,
a
we're fucked
parallel.
in that.
I'm not trying to like onboard solutions to immigration problems. So I was just giving a parallel. I can give a different parallel that doesn't have to do
Yeah,
with
give a different one because the thing is, I massively just disagree with them making it that far into the country in the first place. That's just a difference in our worldview that we have. That's
also
going to
difference
conflict
in
with
Christian
using it.
perspective. But I would say that
I mean, I
like,
don't know, like that. It doesn't really like. Yeah, sure. There's an element of Christian perspective that is like, I shouldn't have you shouldn't have your land massively invaded. You should protect, like, you have a duty to protect
Your borders.
your home. Yes, that's like what I
Christian is all about
understand.
keeping
But
your neighbors far away.
but also all the non-Christian nations do this also. So it's not just a Christian thing. It's just a
but it's also false
practical
advertising
thing to
because
do.
America advertises itself as a nation that takes on
Give
the
me you're
world.
hungry, you're poor.
Yes, we have a legal system that is,
Yeah.
well, you're welcome to come in through that system. Yes, that's what we're trying to say.
Yeah, so if we are a country that's at a better position than most countries for onboarding large groups of people who are not from here. So when you're talking about like enclave building and stuff earlier, we are a country that's way better at dealing with that than most countries in the world. So we're not one for one with a country that isn't as good at dealing with enclaves and onboarding as masses because we've done that historically since our beginning.
Because we do, I mean, just because we have the capacity to do that doesn't mean that we should. I think that's just like, I don't think that just because we have like opportunity for people who are not from this country means that they just get to pour in and reap the benefits of those opportunities.
Well, I would say that's just a disagreement on how pro people we are because we're both pro people and
no,
we're
pro
just not a
human.
little-
I'm pro the human race,
Yeah.
and this country. I already broke it down how it works, and the way
I'd be a little bit
you're
more
talking about
pro-human.
it goes against that design.
Well, it's coming across as like pro nation state, and I.
Well,
am
yeah,
coming
of
across as
course, yes.
pro-human.
I am a nationalist, naturally.
Sure.
Yeah.
I like this
Nationalist
country.
first, humanist second.
No, they're synonymous. This is the most pro-humanitarian nation there is. Like, humans like it here, right? They love it here.
Do you
They
see it
come
as
from-
like if we let too many people in, it'll sink the life raft, whatever, and nobody will? Is that how you see it?
Like
or?
it's all about us taking in a steady flow that the culture can manage without dying, right? So it's kind of like, if I go to the bar and I have a beer, right, I'm fine, right? But if I go to the bar and I take this massive fucking Costco-sized bottle of vodka and I'd like take it to the neck, that's bad for me. I'm going to die, right? So a little alcohol at a time is good because my body can process it and integrate it into my system to where I don't die, right? So that's kind of like the best analogy I could find. Like that, I would say it would be exactly like that.
Yeah, I don't see it that way. I think like historically,
But that's the problem. That's our difference. That's just our difference of our worldview.
yeah, but
You
it
think
feels
over-
a bit, it feels like it
You
feels
think
like
we could take the bottle, the giant Costco-sized bottle, and
No.
survive?
no, I think that Costco's an example of America's hubris. But other than that, I think that it's one thing to pride yourself on the nation of the United States when so much of it is built off of the immigrants who've come in here and been exploited in particular ways, and we share those memories and we share those movements and we explore what they went through and we think of that as American struggle, but then we disconnect ourselves in the immediate situation saying, well, I mean, like that we have to deal with other issues, like their issues. Those immigrants don't have to come into this country, they don't need to immigrate here. When look at all of the immigrants we cherish today that moved here and immigrated here.
We just frame this differently. The best human minds came here, and if they were in charge of putting everyone else in a role to where we could successfully build this country up to the powerhouse that it is today. Everything, I have no issues with the history of this country and how it got so powerful.
Wait, sorry. Did you say that it was the best minds that came here, or that's what we should do in the
Sure.
future? It was the best,
The best, I believe. So I'm so
like the Italian and
it's
German and Irish immigrants who were like pretty poor who came here. Those were
the minds that formed this country, right? Because it wasn't a country when people first started coming here. They were just colonies, right?
Sure.
It wasn't the United States yet.
Mhm.
When they formed this country, the best minds at the time in the world, the most progressive beings on earth at the time, made this country, like helped form this country into being, knowing that, you know, it could be a beacon for mankind to improve beyond them, right? They knew that they were imperfect, but they were building a nation and where we could be better than they were, right? People
Okay.
like to look at the flaws of the founding fathers and just focus on
slavery.
that and say like, yeah, like white man bad, like, but whatever. But
Well, wait. Slavery
That's a
was
good
bad though,
extreme
right? I mean, that was like that's not like a caricature, right? I mean, slavery's
no,
it
they
was pretty
always
bad.
go like, oh, well, they owned slaves
Whoa.
and stuff like that.
That's
It's
a
like, yeah,
chicken
they
and
owned
egg.
slaves. They were a product of their time, but they were also
No.
the most progressive minds out on earth at the time. They would be
Well-
like the farthest lefty that you could find at the time, right?
I
Like
would
they had radically like freedom-loving ideas that were just
I-
not popular.
I would disagree in the sense that I think that like when you're looking at that framework, it's a chicken and egg scenario. The reason why people say these things are because we prop up our founding fathers to this day, and so people feel the need to remind people, well, it's not that rosy. But everyone in this country obviously is happy that the country exists because this is the country
Of
they live
course.
in. They don't need to be reminded of the fact that the founding fathers worked to help make that possible. And it's
They
also,
do when so many people demonize them, right?
Well,
That's
wait.
when they need
I
to be
think
reminded
I think we're
about it.
talking about reaction to reaction to reaction, right? So somebody says they're
Right,
perfect,
right. I'm saying,
and somebody
like,
says, "Well, they
it's-
owned slaves.
okay,
that
yeah.
wasn't perfect," and then you say, "Oh, but
When
they
we
were
go to
way better,
yeah.
whatever." But that's just kind of like a bouncing back and forth
they,
thing, right?
they deserve to be
When we go to
demonized.
school, here's where it all starts, right? It all starts
Yeah.
when we go to school and we start to learn the history of our country, right?
Mhm.
And then when we learn the history of our country, we go home, we talk to our parents. Some of our parents say, "Oh, that's great, Billy." And some of our parents say, "Well, some of those guys were evil white men and they actually just like they built this country off of the blood of immigrants and black people and blah blah blah, and they put this entire like this poisonous idea of the country in their
Well-
kids'
well,
brains."
wait, if you
And that's how we
wait,
like
wait, Joe. So I grant that happens. Do you grant that the other thing happens where slavery wasn't that bad? Everybody did it. You know, they helped uplift those black people. Look at if they were in
I've
Africa
never
right
heard
now,
anyone say
they wouldn't
slavery
have.
wasn't that bad.
Joe,
This
if
is like
you're
such a
Joe, come on.
Yeah.
If you're gonna
Everybody
say that some
commented
people,
say that everybody in the world
If you
has
hear somebody
level of
say slavery wasn't that bad, just don't talk to that person. There aren't that many of them in the world. They will never make a difference in the world. They got to be a hyper minority. I've never met in my life anyone who would just bold face, like straight face, say that slavery wasn't that bad. It's never framed that way,
It's
right?
framed as
Like
something that all human, like every continent outside
that
of
is true,
but
but
it
that
isn't.
doesn't mean it wasn't that
But it
bad.
isn't.
That's just a fact.
No, it's actually it's devised that way. It's not true. And Africa is one of the sole.
What's not true? There's
Africa is the
still
sole.
slavery in Africa right
No,
now.
no, no. Africa is the
Yes.
sole continent that did not have a full epoch of the manufactured slavery that we were seeing the European countries do.
They have
What you're seeing the
slavery
Asian
right
countries doing,
now.
but not. Well, first of all, I'm talking about the system of slavery that existed at that time. Chattel slavery was unique to like the colonies here in the United States, but outside of that, an
It was not.
institutional slavery that was promoted and aided by the state. Of course there's slavery, because what do you do with people after you win a war? If you don't want to kill the person, how do you get the person that you just captured to now ingratiate themselves into your society? You onboard them. You make sure they're not going to be hostile to you, and then you onboard them as laborers. So there's always going to be slavery as long as there's war, unless you're just going to wipe out the people you defeat. And so, of course, historically there was slavery to that level, but that's
not true. People can just learn that, say, hey, like, okay, we're taking over now. Sorry, like this village is now under this government. And then that's the way it is. These
With
people,
what
most
language?
people just go about living their lives
With
unless
what
you
language?
resist, right?
Like
they don't just
if you were fighting in a war and you were perhaps like a soldier or what have you, and you're now captured, you may not even speak the language of the people that captured you, and then on top of that, you may not have those skills. So who's going to train you? Who's going to allow
that's
you to live in this
POW. That's not the same as like taking over a country. Did we enslave all of Germany when we won the war over them? Like, no.
Wars have existed
kind of-
long before there was rules on what to do with prisoners of war.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, we make the rules as we evolved or whatever. But what I'm saying is that, like, it wasn't always that you make slaves out of the opposing, like, citizenship,
You
of the
can,
army
if
you
you're
just dominated. You just like, okay, you're under our rule now. That's all it is. You pay taxes to us.
Mhm.
It's way more useful for a government to have a constituency that supports them with taxes than it is to have an army, like, enslaved a whole country. You cannot. You're gonna.
There wasn't
you're
always
gonna
taxes.
implode. Like.
But
There wasn't
America,
always taxes, and
but
then on
America had
top
a
of
system
that-
very different, where we had a permanent intergenerational slavery of a specific population for hundreds of years,
reinforced by a
reinforced by a state. Yeah.
Yes.
Just wasn't. We were just a. But what are we talking about? We were a product of the time. Where there's no unique, like, sin there.
Yeah, it was.
It's
There was a unique sense.
no, it's
Absolutely,
not. It's
yeah.
not unique. America was unique in abolishing slavery. We're
No,
not
the-
unique.
No,
I
I mean, the UK did it before we did. They outlawed
No, I didn't
slavery
say.
way before we did.
I said. I didn't say who did it. We did it first. I said we're unique in the way we got rid of it. We went to. We had a bloody civil war.
Well, we had half
we
the
had a bloody
country.
civil war in which we had to we fought brother to brother.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and in abolishing slavery, like, we spilled blood over abolishing slavery.
And the issue is
That's not
that blood was shed, and it feels like it feels like there's wounds that haven't healed from that. This kind of South will rise
history
again
has
thing is
has,
like it feels very present now. Do you feel
Me-
that?
Yeah, because we didn't fight a
very
war.
present. I mean, I don't know. There's so many angles we could, like, look at. I mean, it's kind of like, it's like if somebody farted in a room, and then, like, is the fart still there? Like,
No.
days
I mean,
later,
people
maybe
saying
there's
like
particles
people
in the
saying like
air,
civil
but-
war is going to happen. Don't push us. We'll do a civil war again. Like that kind of sentiment.
Oh, I
Don't
see
take
what
down
you're
our
saying. I mean,
statues.
yeah, there's like a lot of division right now, and that's what I don't like. I mean, it's all part of, like, a long. It's So basically, leftist ideology is fine with playing the long game when it comes to destabilizing a
Wait,
country.
you think leftist ideology is
Yeah,
coming from? I don't even understand how that relates to what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
We were talking
yeah.
about the South will rise
The
again.
division and
Don't take down our Confederate
I,
statues. The
no,
left
I'm
did
just saying
that.
the division in our country, like
Wait, you're
this
talking
con.
about like Abraham Lincoln, the North fighting against the South. That's the ideology. That's the problem.
No, I'm fast forwarding like till to today, but I mean
Can you
that.
can you connect those things? Because I'm pretty lost.
No, I got off of like the battle for slavery or whatever. My point there was that we weren't we weren't unique in how we got slavery. We were unique in the way we got rid of it. And
What
I
do you
just
mean we
don't I
were? Or yeah, we were unique, but some other. So like the UK, they were just like, this is outlawed. We're not doing it anymore. You're not allowed to do it. Here,
they
when
did that
we
that's
tried
where
to
we got
outlaw
it
it
from. Oh,
here,
whoops.
but when we tried to outlaw it here, then half the country said, "We'll fucking die first." So that's unique, but it's not unique in
Yeah,
like right. There's something to
it's
that
unique in the way
uniqueness. That's
we
like
abolished it. It's still that part is unique.
it's definitely
Yes, but
unique, but it was not an easy transition, right? So like you
that's
know he got injured in a unique way is not necessarily your doctor says you have a unique condition is not what you want to hear, right?
what I'm saying is that we were so. The thing is, like, there's a lot of things that we would not get into a fight over, right? Like, we're not going to get it. We're not going to go to war over, like abortion or anything like that. But we went to
Hmm.
war over slavery with each other, right?
Well,
That it
yeah.
was such an important issue. It was
Uh-huh.
such an important issue. We were willing to die for it.
No.
That's how it. We were willing to die for it.
But that's incorrect. Is that there were some people willing to die for slavery,
Hmm.
but there was perhaps a
And to
perspective.
fight against slavery.
But there was the overarching narrative was a preserving of the union and those who were against the idea of the union,
Hmm.
and then the largest voices were people who were pro or anti-slavery. But there was many people who were fighting because of what they believed America should be, the Union
Hmm.
or the Confederacy.
Hmm.
It's the same thing. They under the Confederacy, they allowed slavery. And if the the Union does not want slavery, then obviously the Confederacy's got to go.
Okay, but then look at the perspective of this is that like the framing given that we have of like the Civil War is that like the Union Army on their own decided to aid the slaves post the war and free
That's
them.
not
Yeah,
that's not my understanding of it.
what would be your understanding?
My understanding is that this was a something that was a social attitude that was brewing amongst the people, mostly in the North, and it gained enough popularity to where they wanted to do something about it politically,
Hmm.
which in that process led us to the war. We reached some things that could not be negotiated. We're at an impasse where they wanted to secede, and we weren't going to let that happen.
Yeah, so
And that's why,
I
yeah.
think
And
that
it was over one of the main issues that they were going to secede over was slavery, because to
Hmm.
them, slavery was a huge part of their economy.
Hmm.
They would argue that losing their slaves was going to be like losing their lives,
Hmm.
losing their livelihood,
Yep.
and you could to some degree kind of like understand that
Yeah.
that was the
Absolutely.
economy they were accustomed to, and they
think,
did not want to give it up. So naturally,
yeah, I think that's an
we went to
interesting.
war over it.
I think that's an interesting assumption because like you have to pay.
It's not
for,
an assumption.
Yeah, it is
That is
because it's like
which part is an assumption?
one would be that you have to pay for slaves. They're not. It's not cheap to pay for a
Hey,
human being.
do you know that
right?
only 1% of all people in colonies owned slaves?
Exactly. So how are you framing
was
the
for
entire South
rich
as their
people. It was-
economy? Like you're saying, we have to think about it from their perspective of this was their livelihood for what the 1% in the South.
Yes, the rich and powerful people who had the most
Yeah.
influence. Yes.
So would you have the same framework for viewing most wars? Is we should look at the other side and think of their 1%? Because you were critiquing Socrates over the viewpoint of Israeli snipers, but are you going to look at the
No,
1% in
I wasn't
Israel
critiquing. I was giving him. I wasn't. I was giving him a hypothetical to
based
so
on
that I could
Israeli
figure
snipers?
out what he.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a complete. It was a hypothetical. I wasn't taking one side or the other. I was just drawing a hypothetical so that I can get so I can understand what he thinks.
So should
It
we look
wasn't.
at the
I wasn't taking.
majority? Should we look at the majority of individuals in Israel and how they view their government, or should we look at the most powerful 1% and view their understanding of the political apparatus and form history off of that understanding?
I don't disagree with you that it's the most like powerful and affluent people in the countries who are kind of deciding on whether or not we're going to war. I'm not like disagreeing there. I'm also seeing that's kind of a problem,
Yeah, so
right?
think of all the
Because I
people in the
believe
South who died on behalf of slave masters who had
I
slaves that
agree.
were perpetuating their idea of the South and convincing young, largely men, to die for their economic status on the idea of the Confederacy, this idea of America that you love. The same way you love the Union today, the same way most people who love America, and convincing those people to die for a system that
That's why they lost the war. So you know when you look at the writing, like, so I'm a just kind of like a strategist by nature, and so in when you read The Art of War, there's a passage in there that says basically, if the if the will of the people isn't behind your cause, you're not going to lead an effective enough campaign to ensure victory, right? So if the interest of the outcome of the war was only among the most powerful and rich and affluent people in the South at the time, then what do they have as soldiers? They just have a bunch of paid labor. People who don't have, their heart isn't in it, right?
Mhm.
Like the other side truly believes that black people should be free and equal. Their
I,
heart is in it.
I,
The
I
other
don't.
side
That's
does
the
not
other
have,
framing
you know
that
what
I
I mean?
think.
Like the attitude is coming mostly from the people. It's coming from the 1%.
I think that's also like a framing that's given today about it is that the Union was so pro slaves being freemen and that they're fighting because they really hated slavery. When a larger perspective would be they were fighting, one, because there's a bunch of people that would be willing to go to war at any time that we see in warring societies. Second, I would say the largest one is to preserve the Union, the idea of what the country represents, and instability, quelling instability, almost like how we view the police have to get involved because of the immediacy of like a societal collapse like we were talking about. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming like there was a bunch of people who joined who just wanted no societal collapse. They said, whoa, 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 we can't have a war. Let's end this and discuss this diplomatically without something. And they knew that they had to crush another side, what have you. But we give them this like framework of, well, you did this because you loved, or like you respected the idea that black people are people and they can't be slaves. But then we look in the post period and the treatment of said black people, and we see what stopped was the institution of slavery outside of prison systems. But it wasn't like the
A lot
conditions
of
of
a lot
black
of
people.
social
Wait,
movements
wait,
have
wait,
slow like
wait.
Yeah.
Kung Fu. I just want to hear the end of.
slow.
I just want to hear the end of
Yeah.
Wiggle's statement.
Yeah, but I was gonna say it's not like the positions for black people were immediately appeased by the Union. If anything, like that one of the head generals had promised that 40 acres and a mule, and then they rescinded this. You had the assassination of like the most important president at that time, and then post that period, there had to be a lot of black people doing exactly what you said immigrants do on average, is like creating enclaves and working amongst themselves because their own native population was fighting against them, and so they had to survive, which often groups do. It's not always racial, but often groups, I would imagine you would argue Christians have to do that in society today in areas that are more liberal, where they have to form enclaves of self-belief, be around people that are like-minded to an extent because there's people who want to hurt them because they're Christian without understanding what Christianity even is.
In some ways, like it, like I live in Los Angeles, so there are, I know that there's different cities, different counties have their own kind of spirit, let's say. So let's say like, in Irvine or Orange County, it's a lot of, middle class to upper middle class, mostly white people. I mean, I don't know what the exact like religious breakdown of it is, but they might be more Christian than other areas of the, I don't know, like I don't know. I mean, we Christians manage to do okay. It's just that the thing is, in like the problems Christians are having now is not having enough influence in things that have become immensely popular. I mean, not popular, powerful, like social media and the media and things like that. Like, so things look a lot different than they did a long time ago. Like we got a lot of, like me and Socrates are kind of talking a little bit about how there's character and gender swaps and a lot of like the shows and stuff that we watch today. And
genocide of redheads.
Yeah, that just this redhead genocide in Hollywood where they just can't stand redheads and they want to murder all the fictional characters and replace them with, for some reason, it's mostly black. Like, how come it's like not any other race? How come it's kind of weird that it's mostly black people like all the time? Like,
well,
if you're trying to be diverse,
to be fair,
that's not diversity. Like making all the characters black isn't diversity.
To be fair, if almost all the characters were white, then statistically some of them are going to become black. I hate to see it happen to Mary Jane. That's she was our, what did you say, our sexiest and our most redheaded.
It was the thing is like
you
can't Mary Jane as you're making a boys comic book, right? And it's like, okay, what do we become stupid around to where we just do dumb, like irrational things for no reason all of a sudden?
Masturbation
is women.
That would,
right? Like, so it's like,
too.
have you ever seen, okay, here's a perfect example. Have you ever seen the South Park episode where they come back to South Park? There's an episode where the kids are coming back to school after summer vacation, and they notice that one of the girls is starting to develop breasts, and the boys start reverting to like cavemen where they're like, "Ata, ata," and then they start like having these like male competitions with each other to gain the attention of the girl with the breasts, and the girl with the breasts is becoming like the most popular one in school by the boys, and all the girls in school are starting to hate her. That's kind of like that's an example of why Mary Jane serves the purpose that she does in Spider-Man. She's the reason Spider-Man does all these like crazy things. Like
he's not a hero. He's just horny.
Damn, not Uncle Ben, not Aunt May.
It's like they have to put a catalyst. Like, there's got to be
like
something more than just me that I.
If Uncle Ben had tits, oh man, he would have been alive today.
Yeah, it's like, like if maybe Spider-Man wouldn't have saved the train from going off into the water if his favorite pair of tits wasn't on the train, right? Like, it's like he might have been less motivated, right? Mary Jane is the motivation for Spider-Man. He's the reason why he finds a way to win fights that he's losing, like that's just kind of like a catalyst in a lot of these stories. They have a beautiful woman that they're fighting for.
So your issue is that Zendaya is too skinny? Is that
she's not
her cup size is too low to
ugly.
be
Like,
in a story about a Spider-Man?
Bitch face, like she's got this resting bitch face, like she's not fun and pretty and like lights up the room when she walks in, right? Like she just doesn't have that. She's got this like snooty, like I'm better than you type of like attitude, and Mary
Seems
Jane
like
was
a lot of people
that.
like her. I don't know. Yeah.
Huh?
It seems like a lot of people are pretty taken by her.
Yeah, it's like
Sure,
in
there's
contrast to
a
Tom
lot of
Holland, who's
You
know
so
what?
enthusiastic. It's annoying. As Spider-Man, as Peter Parker.
a lot of younger people who didn't get to experience the hot Mary Jane are perfectly complacent with the one they got. I understand. I
Wow.
agree
Don't be
with that.
complacent. Organize.
Yeah.
Demonstrate.
They're totally complacent. Like they don't know. They never
Stop
had anything
traffic.
better. So it's like if you grow up eating gruel your whole life, like, yeah,
Wow.
this gruel is great today, but you never had a cheeseburger. And it's like, okay, well, of course you think the gruel is great because you never had a cheeseburger.
Damn, dude. Like, if Zendaya ever happens to watch this, you're beautiful.
God, I hope.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
She fucking
That
killed
was
it in
my
Dune
day.
2. Oh my god.
That was such
Oh
a
god. So
controversial
good.
Dude,
take.
I've seen
I am-
baristas at
Thank you for
Starbucks
sharing
more
that.
deserving of the role than her.
It was just
It's
it's
just
a
like,
very
oh my God.
controversial take, and the fact that you're brave enough to share that, it
You know who would
you
make a
believe in a higher
great Mary
power.
Jane?
You do.
You know who would have made a great Mary Jane? Sydney Sweeney.
Oh
You
no.
gotta you take
Yeah,
take
she
her,
should be in some
would have been
movie
a
about
way
like
better
a
Mary
spider or
Jane.
somebody, right?
I'm
They should
starting
do
to
that.
see. I'm starting to sense a pattern. The South Park episode, Sydney Sweeney, the perspective of what was it, Kirsten Dunst. It's like, dude, Sydney Sweeney
Well, I
is
didn't
a
think
good
Kirsten
actress.
Dunst was that hot, but the animated Mary Jane was pretty hot.
Dude, Sydney Sweeney is a great actress, but she just has huge tits, and all guys want is to
That's
see her.
amazing. We need to bring that back. Like, bring that where they go.
But so that
Like-
representation is okay, but like,
It's more than
black
okay.
representation, there's a question mark. It's
Wait, what?
it's
Hold on.
political, It's political.
If she was
Smaller tits
black
is
and
political.
hot, that's fine. But okay, look. Here is something that J.R.R. Tolkien said that I
Uh-oh.
believe is so true, right?
We
So
gotta
I
be
think
really
maybe
careful
maybe
not-
somebody
Yeah.
knows what I'm about to say.
Next words.
But he once said, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that evil cannot create anything new. Evil can only destroy what good has already made. So, right? So when I see a character, like a race swap with a character who was originally white, I see a wasted opportunity to make something new and different. Right?
Oh, okay.
You had
I
an
don't
opportunity.
disagree.
You had an opportunity to create a new, different, diverse character that represents a certain community,
Yeah.
and you wasted that opportunity because you said
Good
no. Anything I create is going to be inferior to this, so I need to make my guy this, right? That's basically what you're saying. You're saying that your whatever your story your culture can produce is inferior because you only want to copy what the mainstream has like produced, what writers before you have produced, right? Like,
Sure, but do you feel that about like just reboots in general, or is it only like?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. Like,
you're just against reboots. You're not against some character becoming black. You're just against reboots.
Well,
generally.
that's a separate issue. That's also
It's a
an
separate
issue. That's an issue. That represents exactly what I just said right now. When you just take a character that was originally white and then you make him black,
Okay.
you've wasted. All you did was say, like, okay, there's this sentiment that we get, like, with black culture, right? So a lot of these characters are being turned black, right? So they want to do this in a way to say that, like, we need black representation because black culture is important, but this is the most wrong way you could do this in order to attain that goal, right? So what you're doing is you're taking, like, you're just like co-opting this thing that was already made and just like putting your face on it.
That's art.
It's not like you didn't create anything new. You just like copied it because you don't have faith in your own capacity for
wait.
creation.
So there's different stories. So there's different new adaptations of things. So we were talking about Zendaya. I just mentioned Dune. There's different adaptations of Dune, right? And I don't think that like the new one is just like derivative of whatever. They went back to the source material. They made a new story. I think it's fantastic. I've been just reading the book now. I'm like more than halfway through it. I think he did an amazing job. I don't think that new versions of things are inherently worse. I think that Hollywood is like super conservative about profits, and they're like, we're not going to make anything that isn't guaranteed to make a shitload of money, and that means just reboot after remake after sequel after whatever.
Yeah.
But
What?
but I don't think
But
that's
what I'm trying
like
to say,
the same as just you could make an awesome new adaptation that has like a black person playing a role that used to be played by a white person. Like that's not inherently bad. I think it's better to create new things.
You can do that. You can do that when the race or something isn't like super intrinsic or unique to that character.
Wait, I want to go back to Mary Jane. What about her being white was like intrinsic? You said hot, but now we're talking about race swaps, and I don't understand. I hope
also brought up
maybe you can clarify.
What's the issue with
so nobody gets like
race,
the wrong impression?
Right?
Yeah.
It's okay. So the issue with that is just authenticity and fidelity to the source material.
To a comic book. I mean,
no, it's to art. It's to art. Socrates.
Wait. Why do they have to be like? Why is that your main concern when Aunt
race.
May is like way younger? Tom Holland is like.
I don't like that either. I think that was
like,
stupid too.
And then the biggest critique is that like Peter Parker is like attached to Tony Stark, and then there's no Norman Osborn, and yet the biggest like the central critique.
There was no Osborn in that one. What the fuck?
There's no Norman Osborn.
What the hell?
Universe.
Oh my god.
Okay, look, if you want to talk
Zoomers
about, if you want
missing
to have
out.
a separate conversation about how they fuck up the plots and everything in these
God
movies,
damn.
I'm with you, and I'll have that conversation with you. But this is a very kind of like hyper specific, like topic that is happening across like all these different intellectual properties. That's what I'm trying to focus on, and it's just seems kind of weird. Like, I believe that the artist should have preserved. It's kind of like, what if we took the Mona Lisa and just like painted her black? What would be wrong with that?
Well,
Nothing necessarily wrong
It
with that.
wouldn't, because we still have the
Nothing.
original. We still have the
yeah.
original.
We didn't paint
No
over
one-
it.
No, I'm saying, what if we took the original? What if we took the original Mona Lisa and just painted her black?
That's not happening.
Huh?
Wait,
yeah, I
wait,
don't understand. How does
know
that relate
that's
to
not
any of this?
happening.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't we do that?
Defacing artwork is
Because
generally considered uncool.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah,
not what we're
it's just
talking
not
about.
happening.
That's
I
not
agree.
happening. Yeah.
I agree. But this medium is artwork. That's maybe where we disagree.
We don't disagree about that. I think it's
No,
artwork. We don't disagree.
So why should we deface it?
We're not defacing. We're making a
not
new painting.
But you just said a second ago, if we painted the Mona Lisa,
We're making a
black,
new one. New Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
No, we're
New
not making a
person
one.
painting a new
We're-
painting.
Wait, so every single time they make a
There can
Spider-Man
only be
movie,
one.
They get
every
rid of
time
the
they
other
make-
one.
Okay, so then who is the true
Wait.
Spider-Man?
Tobey Maguire. I'm gonna see if it's still up. Maybe it's
And
gone.
then
I don't know.
Who's the true Venom? Who's the true Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
We all know
And
it's
then-
Tobey Maguire, okay? Like,
and
this
then,
is
like,
not even
okay,
a debate.
Then who's the true Joker? Like, are you a Heath Ledger fan? Or
Oh
is
my
it
God! You're right. They
Phoenix?
took it down. Wait, it doesn't exist
Mark
anymore. The
Hamill.
Tobey Maguire Spider. Oh no, it's on Disney Plus. Never mind. No, it's still
Yeah,
here.
yeah, they got it.
It's still here. Yeah,
No, but it's just kind of like, okay, let me try to make an analogy for you and see if this maybe kind of makes more sense of like where I'm coming from. Let's say you got this guy and he's like, "Hey, you know what? I got this great car, It's the best car you ever had. Like it's the funnest to drive. My car is just amazing, right?
Okay.
Like, but the thing is, I need to borrow your car.
Okay.
And if you tell me I can't borrow your car, I think you're fucking racist.
What does that have to do with
Huh?
this?
So I just got done telling you
What?
how great my car is, but I
Okay.
need to borrow yours, right? So it's kind of like
What?
But where is
the
the-
leftist in the left. Hold on, I'm getting there. So the leftist white people who tell us that we need to incorporate more like black characters, and that's the reason why they race swap and stuff like that, is because they got this great culture that we need to spread, right?
No.
But okay,
no.
no,
No, that's not what representation
So
necessarily
we do it
is.
because we need to recognize they exist in society, right? Or
Yes,
something
so
like that.
so we do it so that like a little kid growing up can see like, oh hey, there's somebody in a superhero movie who looks like me. I'm not like superheroes aren't the best movies in the world,
Okay,
but
this is
that's what
also
representation
very
can be.
untrue. Like I told you I'd get passionate about
Go
this
ahead.
topic. When when
Be
little
passionate for
girls
3 minutes,
like,
and then I gotta go. 3 minutes, yeah.
okay. So I mean, there's this great meme that was floating around this topic where it's kind of like young girls see the black Ariel, like young black girls see the black Ariel, and they're like, finally, someone that represents me. And then it shows the young boys looking at Optimus Prime, and they're like, they're all different races, and they're all looking at Optimus Prime, and they're like, that's me. Like that's the thing. Like none of these characters have to look like Goku. Doesn't need to look like me for me to watch Dragon Ball. Like
Well, I mean,
I don't need
that's really a pretty advantaged position to have, because it's like, as somebody
Oh
person,
God!
as someone
Look,
as a
no.
person
Okay,
of
look
color,
here. I'll concede privilege. In this area to the. If you're the guy who draws and writes the character,
Yeah.
it gets to be yours. Yes, that is your privilege as the creator. It gets to be yours if you create it.
okay, so then you should
Is
accept
that
there's
so
a black,
insane? Yes.
you should accept there's a black Mary Jane. Then I think that ends this discussion.
No,
right?
you didn't create black. Okay,
Well,
the thing
they
is,
did.
black people
Yeah.
didn't create Mary Jane. If you did you create
Originally,
Mary Jane?
or-
No.
Okay,
So-
so the people
So you're
who
saying we
created
should
them
just
gave
have
them
black
consent.
artists making movies for a long time.
No, it's beyond
whoever.
that. It's
Okay,
that
look.
the creator gave
Just
them
black
consent.
stories told for a
Okay,
while to balance it out.
let's flip it around then. Really,
The
like
creator
before he
gave
has
them
to go, let's flip it
consent, though.
around. Let's say we take a black creator who
Okay.
makes a black superhero,
Okay.
and then we take him and make him white. What's wrong with that?
It's not necessarily wrong.
It's not
Nothing wrong,
necessarily
right? So if we
Yeah.
if so nothing wrong with that. Okay.
Not necessarily.
I think there's
Depends on the
something wrong there. I feel like we're forgetting the artist.
If it
and
was
who
Static
he
Shock,
was,
I'd be a
what-
little bit
what
upset. Yeah.
culture he represented.
Well,
Like,
guess what?
we-
The artist consented to allowing the change to happen, because there's
No. Let's say
Something to
no.
work.
That's not true. The people who wrote like Superman or whatever died a long time ago.
Well, they sold
So,
those rights.
like-
Maybe they shouldn't have. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Maybe they did. Maybe they just died. Maybe they just died, and they're
Well,
just gotta roll in
So
their
you're against
grave
like
whenever,
the legal
like, British
system.
person plays
You want to
Superman. I don't know.
overthrow like copyright laws, or like you don't like.
Yeah,
I'm an
understand
American. I
how-
like the
how
U.S.'s
all that
legal
happened.
system.
If the thing is that if you, it also degrades like the quality of these properties, because telling the story is no longer the main goal. Now the main goal is
selling
like
Zendaya. The main goal was the
DEI
Spider-Man
and stuff
part.
like that. Like
No,
that's the
the-
main goal. And
the
when you
main
have that as
goal-
the main goal, it fails.
No, the main goal was clearly to propel Spider-Man, to sell Spider-Man merch, not to sell Zendaya, so that the vast money in the black community would go towards like.
Do you really think?
Oh wow!
now-
It was the
now,
first
I'm so
first
curious
Spider-Man
you
film
said
to
that.
gross over $1 billion worldwide. That's crazy.
Do you think Spider-Man
Highest
sells
grossing film
more
of all
merch
time.
now than he did during the Tobey Maguire era?
Yes,
Yeah.
because there's
Really?
multiple.
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I
You
mean,
think
there's-
that he sells like if I were to look at
Wait,
his
wait, Joe,
sales-
I just want to get your
Guaranteed.
opinion on this. You said that it's that casting Zendaya is obviously DEI and it obviously fails, but it's made more profits than any of the other Spider-Mans.
I don't know. Well,
What do you
yeah,
think
if you
about,
look at
like,
inflation
that whole-
and things like that? Yeah,
Even accounting for inflation.
Even accounting for inflation. I mean that,
Yeah.
but the thing is that it's still
Could you
a
be okay?
Spider-Man
So those
movie,
three
so it's
things,
not gonna,
they can't all be true, right? Do you want which one do you want
Zendaya
to?
is not the main
retract?
character in the movie.
So you're
Well,
saying
for
that it
most
just it
people-
wasn't that impactful. That
People go there to see Spider-Man, right? Like, yeah.
no,
I'm
probably
still going to
Zendaya
enjoy-
more than Tom Holland. To be
I'm
honest,
going
yeah.
to enjoy all the Spider-Man parts of the movie, right? But I could enjoy the movie even better when I skip all the Zendaya parts.
That's fine if you don't. I mean, honestly,
That's what I'm trying to
it's for
say, is
kind
that
of young
it's like,
people. I didn't watch
okay,
it. That's fine, but you don't have to like everything, right? It's okay to not prefer something.
Yeah, but I could also have an opinion on it.
You can have an opinion,
too.
but
So
but
if my
you're saying that
opinion is
nobody should
Zendaya
have it because you
has
don't like
resting
it.
bitch face and a terrible attitude, that's what she is, and then that means
She's
she
kind of
is
uppity, is
the
what you're
opposite.
saying.
She's the opposite. If you race aside, she's the opposite of everything Mary Jane was. Pretty, bubbly, confident.
she's not pretty.
Like the whole character
She's
sucks.
not confident. She's not pretty.
Yes, she is.
These are.
Yes, she is.
Okay,
She
this
knew
is very,
she
this
was
is very
like what,
interesting.
an actor because she believed she was pretty. Yes, she was
No,
an actress.
Yeah, you're talking about
She's
Zendaya.
probably a
not
model
being
No,
because
I'm not
she's
talking
pretty.
about Zendaya. I'm talking about the
character
character
Mary Jane.
Mary Jane, the character.
Mhm.
Okay, so then how did Kirsten Dunst? How was she not uppity? In the Tobey Maguire series.
Yeah, she was
Kristen
pretty.
Dunst
She was like
wasn't-
yelling at him all the
she
time.
wasn't the best she wasn't the best representation. What I'm saying is that, but she was a lot closer.
But then you give her a lot
to the
more
comic
leeway.
book.
Zendaya is so much worse.
Wait, was she even
She
redheaded?
is.
Like that's
It doesn't.
like,
Well, they make the thing
Oh,
is they
yeah,
can make
she
her
was
hair
redheaded.
red.
Yeah, she was redheaded.
Yeah.
And she was white.
She's a redhead. Yeah,
Plus she's white.
she is close to the source material.
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire
In terms of
is
her
always,
color of her skin and her hair and her tits, right? Those are
is
that's the
okay.
character's
Is one
main.
is one of the characteristics of Peter Parker is that he's a white kid from New York?
Well, there's a black Spider-Man, right?
Well,
Yeah,
but
for
his
Peter
name's not
Parker.
Peter Parker.
He's not Peter Parker.
The
It's
qualifier for Peter Parker.
Miles Morales.
Miles Morales. Yeah.
The qualifier for Peter Parker would be that he's like his income status and like he's like from Queens and then his Aunt May.
He's always been white.
And bitten by a spider.
well, this
Everybody's always
Well,
been
this
white
is-
in American media
He's
for a
always
long
been
time,
white.
right?
Yes.
Well, this is the thing. You latch onto the whiteness,
Yeah.
but the same way that you're talking about Goku,
Mm-hmm.
all the black kids who watched Peter Parker, they didn't latch on to the whiteness. They
Yeah.
just saw Peter Parker. But you happen to latch on the whiteness and think it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty telling because it's the same as Goku. You didn't latch on to Goku as Asian. You say, oh, well, Goku is like me. But suddenly when it's Peter Parker, he's white. And that's very important. Why?
No, Goku is Asian in my opinion. Like, yeah, duh, he's Asian.
But why
Like,
is it
that's
so
what I see.
important that Peter Parker is white to you? At what point did Peter Parker emphasize his
not,
whiteness
it's just-
in the comics?
It's the same problem I have if they made Goku white, right? If they all of a sudden made Goku into a white person, I would think that's just as corny as changing a white person to a black person. I just don't see
so
any
you have
like
problems with Super
nobody.
His problem with
See,
Super Saiyan?
The thing with my principle is that it's uniform across the board. It doesn't change
But wait,
no
wait.
matter
It
what
is.
the
Is there
original
some-
character was.
Is there
right?
some issue that pretty much all characters in terms of movies that were made for most of American history were all white? Is it possible that somebody might look at your argument and be like, this guy's white, he was happy when all of the characters were white, and he doesn't want them to be changed to black, but I'm like not white and I maybe want to see different representation. The
If
movies that
most of
get
the
made,
people
unfortunately,
writing
I would love
comic
to see
books-
more novel IP, but it's a fact that a lot of like remakes get made. So maybe some of those characters are going to have to be not white to have some representation. Is it
You're
possible
just
you're
going to
missing
have to-
something there?
If you want more representation, then you need to be more representative in creating the medium.
Wait,
so
but,
if, like-
but who's creating the medium?
Like, okay, so if most of the people creating the superheroes were white and they were drawn white, that's just how that's just how the sausage was made, right? Now more people know how to write comics. So now
Well, it's not
more
just
people have
writing,
access
it's
to it.
like funding, right? So movies that get made, America's had this
it-
kind of like complicated history with race for a while,
Also
as we've been
cheap.
discussing.
It's also cheaper because of ink and stuff, right? Wouldn't it be cheaper to draw
True,
white
yeah.
characters?
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like
Not as much cross-hatching.
people. The thing is, you can just make your own characters, right? Like if you want to have characters that represent the black community, just make them. You have a chance to create something new and original, not taking someone else's. Like that looks like you have no faith in your own creativity.
Wait, but who's
Like,
the
you're
you?
taking from the
who's the you? Because it's not like
I'm
black
saying
comic
it's
book
like
artists who are deciding what
if you're
movies
this
get made.
entity, if you're this
It's like
movement,
Universal
like,
Studios
let's say
or
that
Disney or whatever,
the
right?
the movement that pushes that thinks it's gonna be a good idea to race swap or gender swap a character, that the reason why they're doing that is misled, because they just don't see that there's a better opportunity for what they're trying to do in creating a new like media, a new IP.
No,
That's the
I
real
think
answer. That's what you
that's an
should
extremely
do.
valid point. That is what you should do. That's generally what people who push for representation talk about should happen. But if that doesn't happen, because the studio is wary about definitely making their money back, they don't want to be at a loss, they don't want to test something new. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of Hollywood is at. I 100% agree that they should be a lot more like willing to take risks. But if a totally new IP doesn't get created, would you say that, well, if it's not a new IP, you can't race swap, and if that means we don't have representation, so be it? Is that what you would say?
Are you saying if it's a new IP?
I'm saying if like it seems like we're at the point, unfortunately, where most of what happens in terms of production is not novel IP because the studios are scared about making a profit. They're pussies, whatever. Right? I agree with you on that. They should, but if that novel IP that has representation from the get go of like a POC character, if that isn't getting made, or if it's getting made like 5% or whatever of new movies are something novel, but that 95% that's just remakes, whatever. Are you saying that just if they've been white, they should just stay white? Or would you say like maybe it's okay then to
Whatever
have some
race they
representation?
were originally, if the creator intended for them to be that way, maybe they should just, it's kind of like I would, like I said, I would say the same thing about a character that was originally black and then got whitewashed, right? I would say that is equally bad. That should also not happen.
All right, I've got
I think
to go so badly.
yeah,
This has been such an interesting conversation.
Too, I mean,
Wiggle, if you want the last word on this, and then I'm gonna
Yeah,
I
I
gotta
would
head
say
out.
there's a really excellent example within black spaces, which is like in Black Panther, you had the Black American character who became Killmonger, and then you had like T'Challa who is African, right? And those are two, like the character of T'Challa is like supposed to be African, is like a Wakandan character representative of Wakanda, but then there was a swap, an inner black swap between a Black American who doesn't really have that history and an African, and that was done really well in the course of that film. Obviously, at the end of it, as you know, T'Challa gets back as the Black Panther, but we got a lot out of that film, and that the thing that people liked the most was the representation of Killmonger, even though he doesn't end up being the Black Panther the whole time, because of that duality of the Black American experience and that kind of fake out swap. And think of like what we all got out of that, even though the story wasn't permanently etched with like a Black American, Black Panther. We still got the best
no,
of both
the
worlds.
funny part was that Killmonger was like a black leftist, like a fanatic type of black person. That's why he had an ideological, difference with T'Challa, and I think that was a great framing. It was like another repurposing of the Martin Luther King versus Malcolm X type of struggle of black culture and black politics.
And wouldn't you argue it's even more than that, because T'Challa is not Martin Luther King? He'd be representative of like African anti-colonial leaders.
Sure, but
Killmonger would be
Martin Luther King is that Killmonger saw white people as like a problem.
This is too interesting, and it's going to keep going on. We have to pick it up, but let me give just one more, because Wiggle, I said you'd have the last word. Let me just hear that, and then I'm going to read out.
Then, in fairness, because I came in later, I shouldn't really have the last word. I would say that this was really enjoyable. We should, at some point, have the same thing again to finish all of this, if you guys are down, and then end it like that.
Yeah, this was great.
Sure.
Huge agree there.
Yep.
All right. Take care.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.
Later.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming by. Give me a follow. Check me out on YouTube. And we're going to raid off to Stardust now. Be good chatters, and have a good